Origin, alien. Location, Antarctica. Age, unknown. Intent, survival. Destination, man. John Carpenter's The Thing, the ultimate in alien terror. Rated R. Starts Friday at a theater near you. Check newspapers for local listings.
And I've got this. That very expensive. That's the novelization. That's really expensive.
Man's warmest place to hide is a hole. Or what does that say on the top?
Man is the warmest place to hide.
Oh, man is the one.
And it's true. That's true.
Cool. That's very true, guys.
Yeah.
It's not a tom-tom?
Whenever you're cold, just find a man.
Did you call it a tom-tom?
Like I did, indeed. I have no idea. What's the Star Wars thing?
It's tauntaun.
There you go. Thank you.
Yeah.
What's the Star Wars thing? Those are very warm.
Yeah, must be.
Well, that being said, welcome back to another episode of ReconCinemation. I'm John Diner.
I'm David Munchak.
I'm Brent Hutchins.
And this is the podcast that takes a look back at some of our favorite films from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And as we announced on our last episode, which was Batman, that you can find in the archives at www.ReconCinemation.com, we are going to take a hopefully short pause on our episodes. We're going to make this one today, which is a very, very special episode that we're going to get to in a moment. But we are going to take a break and a hiatus, and I'm not sure how long that's going to be, but there's some stuff outside of this show that's come up that's going to kind of make it difficult for a little while. So whenever we can get back to doing shows, and we're going to, we don't know exactly when that's going to be. Maybe a month, maybe two. We'll see. So stay tuned. Don't give up on the show. Everyone listening, stay tuned. We're going to have more. But like I said, before we go into that pause, we're going to do one of probably our biggest episodes, and come sort of full circle. But we just had to have somebody super special join us, who's also sort of an expert in this field. Welcome back to the show, EK Wimmer. Welcome back, buddy.
Hey, you really set me up there for failure. So
it's the
man who knows.
First.
I've never seen you fail on any of these.
I'll do my best.
You're always a killer.
I was going to say the man who knows every single thing about this movie. It's EK Wimmer, but
I would defer to you on this episode. But I will say I enjoy any time it is John Carpenter related. I come like my ears are burning, and I'm there and ready to talk about anything John Carpenter. And if you add Kurt Russell to the mix, yeah, you don't have to twist my arm.
Yeah, and this is really a full circle episode, because our very first episode of the show, again, you can find it in the archives at ReconCinemation.com, was John Carpenter's Escape from New York. So here we are, 137 episodes later, and we're right back with Carpenter's next movie. So after all
seems fitting. I think it's brilliant.
And it's we're also celebrating Kurt Russell's upcoming birthday. So it's a ginormous episode. Last year, of course, we had Kurt Russell's birthday coincided with our 100th episode special. So, which EK, you joined us for that as well.
Yeah, it was a party. It was
that
wild.
Was
your interns, man, your interns were out of control.
Yeah,
super busy.
They get that way.
But here we go. So we are going to talk about John Carpenter's The Thing. And I've been waiting for this one for a long time. If you thought I was excited about Three Men and a Baby, this is going to just ratchet it up one more notch.
Is this in the grandma collection? Can we get that out of the way real quick?
No,
I have to know.
Nope. This did not make the grandma collection. Nope.
This is like the first movie in the last 6 that we've done that wasn't in the grandma collection.
We had a streak. Yeah.
That's pretty unique in itself.
It was Three Men and a Baby and A Fish Called Wanda were both in the grandma collection, but actually, and Batman was. So all three last month. There you go.
I'm not lying.
But yeah, so let's talk about it. There's so much to talk about this movie. This episode might go on a bit. There's a lot to cover. We've got the novella. We've got the 1951 film, the making of this one, and all the fallout and what's happened with it since. But 1982, what a year for movies! I mean, that was a huge year. So many big movies came out that year. Some of which didn't, like this one, didn't get its true status until later on. But God, I mean, what came out this year? Brent, one of your all-time favorite movies came out, right?
Well, let's do it. E.T. Yeah, for sure.
Mhm.
The extraterrestrial. It's I think this movie going up against that movie had a lot of weight because that was like a super popular alien movie right at the same time. Totally different demographic, but yeah, that one kind of took the nation by storm and is absolutely one of my favorite movies, and one of the movies that pushed me into wanting to work in the industry and make movies myself. So
When you were 3, you're like, I gotta
do
make
it.
movies.
you still have no idea how old I am, huh?
I thought you were 3. Maybe you're 4. You're 4 at the time. Maybe
Man,
you're
I
4.
remember seeing E.T. at the theater.
Wow,
think we
You were
discussed this.
4.
We
You're
have-
not 70. How
we have
old were you?
discussed it.
You guys weren't you guys? You and John in the same year in college? What-
Yeah, but the way that E.T. rolled out at the theater, it was like a slow burn, So like, just because it kind of spread and spread and spread.
All right.
So
All
it was, I was closer to 5, but
All right.
I do recall it. And then, that movie was interesting because VHS wasn't and home video wasn't what it is today or got to. And so it was impossible to find versions to watch. And so there was kind of an allure to the absence of being able to watch it again.
I remember being a kid. There was this thing of like ETs on video cassette. You got to get it.
No.
We got it for Christmas
Yeah,
or
when
something. It was a big deal.
It was
like,
a big deal
when it
hit
first
video.
came out. Yeah,
Like,
but
yeah.
that was like years and years after
a couple
it
years.
came out
Yeah.
at the theater.
My parents had a bootleg copy on Betamax, and it was like literally somebody set up a camera in the theater. So that was how I
Wait,
saw it. for years.
what street corner is your dad going to go find the ET bootleg?
I have no idea.
the right
You don't even want to know.
We got to talk to your dad about this. We got to find out where are you getting the. Like, oh, you want ET? Okay,
opens a jacket.
go down.
A jacket.
Yeah, like there's
Just
just
VHS
video
tapes, like
Betamax tapes just laying.
I see the scenario being more like the beginning of Gremlins, or his dad just has to
Yeah.
have it.
that's a good call.
He'll do whatever it takes to get it for his boy.
Old wise man in some basement
Yeah.
store, That's
Don't play
great.
that beta after midnight. You know what'll happen.
Oh
That's
my
great.
God. Yeah, but E.T. was the number 1 movie that year, right? 82.
I believe so. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
But there were so many other great movies, some of which we've covered here. 48 Hours we covered. Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, Brent's favorite movie.
Not really.
The King of Comedy. King of Comedy
Yeah.
came out.
That is a great movie.
Yep.
I like
Conan,
that one a lot.
Conan
Fast
the
Times?
Barbarian.
Yeah.
Yeah, Fast
Fast
Times,
Times.
right?
Yeah.
Jeez, we did a lot of 82.
We were stuck on 82 for a while. But
Hey.
then some that we didn't get a chance to cover. Maybe we will down the road. But Poltergeist, The Verdict, Blade Runner, First Blood. I can't believe we didn't cover First Blood, but
Ayo.
there's something to look forward to. And of course, don't you dare forget Megaforce,
Oh yeah.
the movie that
Megaforce.
tops them all.
There's a couple good horrors that came out that year too. Creep Show was a big one.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And House on Sorority Row, which is one of my favorites, that
Yeah.
came out too. That was the copy that I had was home recorded that my dad brought home. It was one of the first horror movies I ever saw, and that was 82 as well.
That's awesome.
Not in 82, but I mean
Yeah.
shortly
Yeah.
after.
A little later.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it just goes on and on. There's so many great movies that stand the test of time, and we're gonna look at this one, which really didn't do well at all when it first came out, and it took years for its reputation to finally come back around. But David, how about you do your traditional plot rundown for The Thing?
Well, what's really unfortunate is we were doing preparing for the show. It was like, oh, top top favorite movies right now with the crew. So I just watched Mortal Kombat again and prep for that, and I didn't even realize we weren't doing Mortal Kombat. So
They're pretty
that's kinda-
close.
Yeah,
Yeah.
almost identical.
So, but if I can remember, if I can reach back into my brain about the thing, there's a science research center in the Antarctica, and there is an invader that comes from a different outpost, and this American crew is trying to figure out why this Norwegian crew had they had made some discoveries, and then disaster struck, and now they feel that something has happened to them, and they quickly realize they've been invaded by an otherworldly presence that can take their forms and spread. And it goes from a kind of a thriller to it's a mystery thriller action sci-fi movie. There's so much going, and drama, and just character drama. So this is one of those movies that just hits all the notes for that's a really, whatever your bag is, you're gonna kind of, I think, feel intrigued and engaged in some way. So this is one of those almost perfect movies in terms of plot, pacing, and theme, and genre. I don't know.
Unless you're looking for a romantic comedy, then this one probably wouldn't fit that bill.
This is not a romantic comedy, mostly. So
Correct.
Yeah.
When was EK? We'll start with you. When was the first time you saw the thing? How old were you? Were you a kid? Did you see it when you were older?
No, I saw it when I was pretty young. I wouldn't say mid-teen. I would say probably, maybe 12 to 13, somewhere around there. But when I saw it for the first time, I think at that age, I was just more interested in the setting. It being this cold, isolated setting really struck me. And of course, the creature feature part of it, the horror of it was really gruesome. It wasn't until years later, every time I would watch it as I got a little older, it got a little more interesting. And I think that's something that's fascinating about this one is I've seen it basically my whole life, but I feel like every time I watch it, it kind of strikes a different note. And I don't know a lot of movies that have the ability to kind of age with you. They tend to be stuck in their time and their one message, but this one, there's a lot of different readings you can take away from this. So even though I saw it early on, I don't think that my first impression really is the same impression I hold today at all.
Yeah, the themes especially, which we'll get into in a little while, that they really do carry over through time. I mean, a lot of that, it doesn't matter what time period you're in, that's always going to be something that rings sort of true. But yeah, interesting. Brent, what about you? When did you first check this one out?
I think the first time I saw it was probably late night cable. I remember seeing this and like Night of the Living Dead. It was probably around Halloween time. They used to play like these back-to-back like horror chunks late at night. And I'm pretty sure that both of those movies were the same night, like watching it late, like into the early hours of the morning. And like I didn't pay much attention to it then. Like it didn't, similar to what EK is saying, like it's kind of one of those movies that as I've gotten older, it's become more and more to use a strange word, like endearing to me. And so there's just like, I don't know, it's something that's kind of aged well for me. And each time I watch it, I feel like I like it more and more. And so, but it wasn't until really junior high or middle school that I kind of watched it again for the first time and saw it and was paying closer attention because, I was more interested in the macabre and kind of the horror movie scene and kind of similar, to the creature feature effects and things like that. And so, it was around that time frame, but yeah, similar. It's just as I've kind of gotten older and seen it a number of times now, like it's just one of those movies that you can kind of sit down and just kind of put on and watch. And the tension and suspense that's built throughout the movie. Like it just, like no matter how many times you watch it, like it's done so well, like it still resonates each time. So it's it's really well done. It's a great movie.
David, what about you? Was this a first time watch for you?
Oh no.
All
But
right.
the first time I probably watched it was like what, 6 years ago with you.
With me, yeah.
Was that when we did it outside in one of the outside
No,
summer screenings? Or
I think before that.
Before that, okay.
Yeah, I think we had just watched it before that.
I think John was like, "You idiot! You need to watch this.
You
I definitely-
poser.
You stupid." So yeah, no, and but I've probably seen it 3 or 4 times, and then one more time for the show. So, and yeah, you know what? To be honest, in preparing for the show, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna watch the thing, and it's great. Like I'm like, I'm gonna get bored. I'm gonna there's some okay, I've already seen it. And it's none of that. Like there's something engaging about just everything about this is quite surprising for someone like me who's not like you three, and then it still holds the attention, the and everything about it's great. With the pacing and story and just everything that you need to be engaged, it's all there. Like it's really well done. That I think no matter who's watching this is going to be just completely engaged, whether they're like, someone who studies film or someone who just enjoys a good movie or just, someone who wants to be entertained. I think like all three are just like, yeah, this is kind of it. This is one of those films, because that, that's where I ended up. I'm like, yep, I can't deny how much I'm enjoying this. This is great.
There you go, David. I'm proud of you for that.
What?
Did you watch it back to back 2 times in a row?
What the fuck are you talking about?
like the rest of us?
I have never seen a movie back to back.
I find that impossible to believe. You've never seen a single movie
Who does
back
that?
to back.
No, you freaks do.
We've all done it.
Even as a kid, like the Muppet movie you didn't watch back to back or something. Like, come on, man.
Star Wars.
I can't recall. It's possible, and I was like, "I'll put it on again." I don't know, but when you're like a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old, yeah, you're probably not wondering like what else is on.
Oh, jeez, Captain Hook over here. Listen, we're just all Peter Pans. We don't want to grow up.
I like stuff.
True.
I like. I've watched. There are definitely movies I've watched way too many times that I would think is even appropriate, but I don't watch them back to back. I don't know. I just move on.
Fine.
It's done today. Today is done. Well, I'll watch it tomorrow.
Well,
there's nothing wrong with that. If you, I would love. I want to meet the guy who watches the movie 3 times in a row. So
you're probably talking to him right now.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's John and it's this movie.
It's John and it's Marnie.
I can literally, when we're done recording, just go watch it right now. Like,
Yeah.
What's that Alfred Hitchcock movie? Marnie.
Marnie? Yeah.
That I could see you probably watch that 3 times.
Marnie? Yeah, well, I'm a big Marnie fan.
Well, who's not a Marnie head right now?
Oh, and that actually ties into this episode.
Oh shit! Really? Help me.
Yeah, the matte painter from that is the one who did the matte painting for the thing. He's the one that created the spaceship.
Get the hell out of here!
It's all scripted.
Yeah, he did the birds, and then he did that, and so he worked for Hitchcock, and he was old school Hollywood. He was kind of the best in the biz.
Wow. Okay.
What a small world. It's all connected. Everything's
I mentioned
connected.
Marnie, and this guy is on the thing. I mean, come on.
Yeah, what was his
good.
name? I forgot his name, but he's real famous. I should have wrote it down. Yeah, he's the one that created, when you see that shot in the thing, when they look out and they see the buried ship, all that painting, all that matte painting was done by him.
Oh, wow.
Boy, do I miss matte paintings in film now.
Yeah, especially when done well.
Yeah, when done well, you don't notice it, and it still adds that depth without feeling, taking you out of the movie. Like sometimes, not all of them, but sometimes all the CG does today's films. But we did have a good time. I had a backyard movie night a number of years ago, and we screened The Thing, and then we went immediately into, I think, 2 rounds of the board game, and it was a blast.
That's right.
Yeah,
it was nothing but a good time.
That game, oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's a fun game.
What a fun game.
It is. It's an
It's like
incredibly fun game. It's
playing
also
the
really
movie.
hard to win as a human.
Yes, very, very difficult.
It's a
But
very difficult game to navigate as a human.
yeah. But
Have you played? Yeah, we'll talk about it.
Yeah, we'll come back to the
Jumping
game.
ahead.
But the God, I have feel like a long relationship with this movie. I didn't really know of it until I was about 11, and it was the spring of 1991. My friend Jeremy and I were at the time we would go down to the video store, which was like walking distance from his house, and we were just getting into horror movies. So we would rent whatever the like strangest looking VHS cover was. That's what we'd rent, and we'd literally judge books by their covers. And we picked The Thing one day because of the amazing Drew Struzan poster. That is just a beautiful, beautiful image. And oh my God, there it is. EK is currently holding up a rare, extremely rare VHS copy of it. Where'd you get that?
I found it thrifting earlier. I guess it would have been late last year. And it's the original MCA Rainbow release with the stereo stripe on it. And it's in pristine condition. And I would say it was one of my top wants for a long, long time. And it's way out of my price range. So to find it for 99 cents in perfect shape was a rare treat. Yeah, unreal. And I watched it last night and it looks incredible. It's like brand new almost. So
wow.
It's a beauty. Yeah, that cover art, that poster design will pull anybody in.
Yeah.
Isn't it crazy that like that thing was produced like 35 years ago or whatever? I mean, when did that edition come out or whatever? And it's never been owned by anybody. It bounced around. It was produced, it was put on a shelf, it was shipped somewhere, it lived in a store, and then it was that store couldn't sell it, so it went somewhere else. And it bounced around between all these like reseller things that all that, and it never found a home. It just had to keep going around and around and around. And then it finally made it to a store that you happened to walk into and you found it. And then it's now lovingly in your library. And as you said earlier, that it's in a pristine condition. It looked fantastic. So you are the only one that's played that tape, and it's existed for decades. Isn't that something?
It's
crazy.
It's kind of meant to be. I feel like I willed it into existence, but there is something I agree, John, about that artwork. I was the same way. When you're browsing the aisles, there is something about that weird absent-faced burst coming out of a snowsuit that stands out right away from anything else around. The colors, those blues,
yeah.
I mean, it's just beautiful design.
Yeah, I mean, that's Drew Struzan is my favorite poster artist, and partially because he's able to capture the tone of the movie so well in his artwork. And whether it's The Thing or Back to the Future or Big Trouble in Little China, Better Off Dead, like there's it goes up, some of the Star Wars movies, goes on and on. Like he somehow is able to get that tone across, and it sure worked with that poster.
Well, and then he reused that design again. I don't know if you've seen the movie The Mist, but there's some book art design that's shown at the beginning of that movie that is based similarly off that same kind of silhouette on that poster.
Yeah, well, it makes sense for that movie too.
Yeah,
and if it works, keep doing it. But yeah, I saw it when I was 11, and I was just like shocked. I remember just feeling sort of shell shocked from the film, especially the dog sequence. I was like, "Whoa! Like what is happening?" And at that time, I was very sensitive about animal cruelty in films, and had a hard time with it, and was like, "That's an intense scene," which we're going to talk about. But then I didn't really watch it again until college when it hit. I had picked up the VHS, but didn't really watch it. I did not have the copy that EK has. It was just standard VHS. But I bought the DVD, and I remember being home for Christmas break one year and just throwing it on, like, all right, I'll give it another try, and falling completely in love with the movie. And so much so that I watched it again, back to back, twice right in a row. David's favorite way to watch a movie.
Unbelievable.
But the second time, it was really like I wanted to find the clues, and I really wanted to explore who was the thing, when did they, each of them, the ones that we knew, when did they become the thing? Like, where was the trail, of which there really isn't. It's sort of left almost up to your imagination of when some of those people who become things, like when it actually happens. I mean, there's even red herrings in the movie. There's that shot where the dog, it's tracking with the dog down the hallway, and it pans into a room, and you see a man's shadow, and he looks over his shoulder as the dog enters the room, and then we fade out of that scene, trying to figure out which person that was. Well, the answer is it was none of the cast. It was stuntman Dick Warlock who was in that scene. So Carpenter did that intentionally so that you wouldn't be able to figure out who that person was and that they were the thing. So brilliant move.
But it's not a cheat.
So,
kind of a cheat.
Sort of, but he's allowed to do that. It's his movie.
It's okay. Yeah. All right. I mean, what's interesting as I watched this was like, you can only trust what you see on screen. So if there is not a character on the screen, then you don't know. You literally don't know if the thing's got them or not. So it becomes it just becomes wildly out of control at a certain point. It's very controlled in the beginning, and then it's like, well, someone's not in this scene, so what could be happening to them, even if they're supposed to be doing something? Right. So it like there's this little chaos that starts to foment, and then it becomes greater and greater. And then even if you're trying to track it, you're like, well, but wait a minute, where is he? And then wait a minute though, what about that? And then you learn new information, which was intriguing. Like, it's not supposed to be straightforward. It's not supposed to, you're not allowed to figure it out. Like, you don't know, you can't track who's who and what's what. Like, and that's intentional. And it's frustrating, like when you watch it the first or second time, because you're like, wait, what did I miss?
Right. Yeah.
But then you keep watching and you're like, but the point isn't for the audience to figure it out. Once you realize that, it's like, okay, well then because they in the movie can't figure it out. Like, you're one of them. You're not an audience member. You're one of them.
Yeah.
In the film.
That's a great point, that watching it feels like you're just another guy in the, at the outpost with them.
Yeah. So that's what I think, that's what elevates it to this thing of like, you watch these like murder mystery movies or whatever, and you're just trying to like, oh, what clue did I miss or whatever. But like, and yeah, if you were in this kind of situation, you kind of do the same thing, but you can't trust what you don't see, So I think that's what like makes it execute so well. It's like, you can't outsmart things that are going on that are beyond your control. And I just love that. So like watching it this time, like, oh yeah, now I really, really get it. I don't know. So it's not a mystery movie.
Yeah. It's and those themes and that story structure has really kind of come along through the ages with the evolution of this story, and it's mastered so incredibly well by Carpenter on a visual sense. But all of those ideas really originated back with the original novella, which was called Who Goes There, written in 1938 by John W. Campbell. And it was actually written for a magazine called Astounding Science Fiction. Have any of you guys read the novella?
Nope, I've not.
No, but I've read a couple from those old pulp magazines. So I'm a big fan of all the old 30s and 40s pulp magazines. And a lot of them have been digitized, so they're online and you can go and see the PDFs of all of them. So I bet you could actually find a PDF scan of that original one and read it in its true sense, with the artwork that probably went with it and everything. So I wanted to, that was my intent, was to check it out right before this, but there's a lot to cram in, and
there is. This is a big one.
Yeah, I haven't. Has anybody else?
I've read it. I read it twice in college, and then I bought the extended version in 2019 that's called Frozen Hell. That was Campbell's family, like decades later, at way after he's passed away, found like boxes of notes of his, and they're literally sitting in their garage. And going through it, they realized there's all these other scenes and chapters that he had written for a full novel of the story. So they put it all back together and kind of, because it was all like interwoven, so they had to kind of reshuffle the whole story, and then they released it as Frozen Hell a few years ago. Which, so I have the original novella and Frozen Hell, and they're both really, really fascinating, really excellent science fiction writings. And the Carpenter did such an excellent job of capturing that tone from the book, that, you know, in the book, I mean, there's differences for sure. You know, the look of the alien is a little bit different, and that they can see this, you know, when they find it in the ice, that they see this eye just like looking at them, and then you sort of get a point of view from the thing as it's starting to wake up and thaw out, and what it's trying to do. And there's a lot more characters in the novella. It's 37 scientists instead of the 12 in the movie. So there's a lot of like names getting thrown at you, and you're trying to, having seen the movie first, like you're trying to figure out, the names are a little bit different, some of them. So you're trying to figure out who is exactly who in the movie, and you know, there's stuff that's been changed and combined for the film. But essentially the theme is the same, that MacReady kind of steps to the forefront, not as much as in the film, but he, as it goes on, he is a little bit more of a lead, not like Kurt Russell is, but just steps a little bit more forward than anybody else. But you know, they have to stay in groups of 4. They won't let themselves get in smaller groups than that, so that they can watch each other. But they really explore, you know, they're talking about, well, how do you know who's the thing, and do you know if you're the thing? And that's not something that's really verbalized in the film, but definitely a theme that's there.
Did they describe the hair of anybody in the novella?
They talk about MacReady's flowing locks.
Okay, because that's what I thought. You know, when Carpenter said he's really the right pick, I figured, well, that's probably because the hair in the original novella was glorious. And
it's a whole chapter just about it. It's MacReady in the mirror, just getting the hair ready for the day.
And that's brushing. What the thing was actually trying to replicate just his hair, not the body. That was so impressed.
When you see that mullet, like you've gotta want to be a part of it.
Giving himself a blowout, just like, all right, let's.
Oh my God! But definitely, if you're a fan of the film, track down either really the original one or Frozen Hell, which is easy to get on Amazon. But yeah, the shape-shifting alien, that was all there. The story was then developed into a film in 1951 called The Thing from Another World. Now who's seen that one out of you guys? Anyone seen it?
I have.
When I was a kid, yeah. I don't remember it though, but I definitely remember seeing it as a kid.
I watched it hours ago.
Oh. You did?
Yeah, I was like, I rented it on a streaming service and was like, hey, I've seen the 82 version enough. Let's check out the 51 version.
It's interesting how different it is.
It is, the tone is completely different. It's not, I mean, it's good. It's like entertaining and it's well done, but like there's, I mean, in comparison, zero suspense. It's not nearly as, you know, kind of dire in its storytelling, but yeah, it's entertaining. And there's, similar to the novella, there are a number more characters in the 51 version than there are in the 82 version.
Yeah, it's much more of that early 50s style sci-fi film with the dialogue, and you're getting a lot of actors literally cramming into one shot. It's like they just keep piling on, so everybody's in the frame. over and over. That's like one of the things that stands out the most to me, that really like takes me out of that movie.
Yeah.
But for its day, it was a great science fiction film. It's different than the novella, and definitely different than Carpenter's. It was directed by Christian Nyby, produced by Howard Hawks, but it's really a Howard Hawks movie. And the thing is, it's not about shape shifting. It's not taking over, bodies and everything. It's James Arness, of all people, who is the lead in Gunsmoke and a legendary TV Western star, is the Thing prior to Gunsmoke. And it's there's a couple great scenes with him, but he's like a plant-like kind of creature that's just sort of trying to kill them, from what I remember. And there is a female in it, so that's another difference from the others. That
there's a lady.
There's a lady. And it's a good film. It's worth watching, but it does not have the depth that the other versions have. It does kind of like Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Can parallel the McCarthyism that was going on, and the feeling of communism, and who is a communist, who's going to sort of rat on each other, and all of that. So it does parallel that which is going on in society at the time, and so it's interesting there. But it's definitely worth watching for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because when you hear John Carpenter talk about the difference between the book and the movie, he holds both in such high esteem. He's very careful when he talks about it, because as you know, we've talked about him plenty of times now, he was a huge Howard Hawks fan. Like, that's one of his precious idols. And so touching anything that Howard had done, he's treating very carefully. But he did want to go back to the original source material. And that's what he was saying, is that even though the film is entertaining and he has great memories of it, when he was younger, it was the actual idea of the creature in the book that was far more interesting, this idea of shape-shifting and taking on forms and stuff. So I think it was really smart that he tried to honor the 51, but he also knew, just as a good filmmaker, that the real story was to go back to the original source. And I think that's pretty bold. I think a lot of people who are maybe not as confident as a filmmaker will stay closer to the film adaptation when they don't really know the source material.
Mm-hmm.
But in retrospect, thinking about this, had he have tried to just remake the 51, it wouldn't have worked. That's what made his remake so special. Yeah. And when this gets compared, and we'll talk about this at the end, I'm sure, of quintessential remakes, what are the best remakes that have ever happened? The Thing is always on there. And it's because The Thing didn't try and remake the film. The Thing went back to the source.
Right.
That's when you're going to strike gold, if you do it right.
Which, funny enough, is what they're talking about doing now. They're talking about doing a film of Who Goes There with that title, I believe, and really do a straight like adaptation of the novel, because there's still differences between Carpenter's. It's a brilliant adaptation of it, but he does obviously change a fair amount of things just to modernize it. But I think they're developing a straight adaptation of the novel. But we'll see what happens with that.
That's going to be tough. That's going to be a tough.
Well, yeah,
hill to hike.
It's really it's swimming upstream for sure, because when you've got a film of this caliber, look at all the attempts at redoing some of the great films in history, and it rarely works. Right. I can't think of a time that really it has worked besides this.
Well, they did Dracula 1,000 times. They did Wizard of Oz 1,000 times, and really those movies, there's only one or two iconic versions, right?
Right.
So yeah, I mean, we probably kind of already have it, and so if they're doing something else, at least it's an attempt. But the odds of it outweighing or superseding what we've already seen, it's kind of tough. But hey, listen, go for it.
and in a way, the 1951 film, I think for a long time, fans sort of saw like what's happening in that as that's the story of the Norwegian camp. that maybe that's sort of a prequel, even though it's not. You could buy it as that's the setup, because you see what they find on the VHS or the tapes that they find. You see them standing around that circle of the ship, just like they do in the 51 film. So you could sort of see it being a prequel, but that's up to you personally if you accept that.
But then there was.
Well, there was a prequel.
We'll get to that. Yeah.
I'll give this new one a try, because I think you can be a little generous saying that he went back to the source material, and I can too. But really, when we say that Carpenter went back to the source, it just means that he liked the idea of a shape-shifting creature. That's about it. That's where it kind of really stops, where he really took off with it. So I think that there is potential for another film if they're staying true to the original novel. It wouldn't compete really in the same way with Carpenter's film, because Carpenter did his own thing. And so there's the possibility, if done right, that this could be its own unique film. It wouldn't just be a remake.
Well, and I think that for anybody who's a fan of the 82 version and seen it, more than once, like any new version that they make is going to be compared to that. But there's, that was 82. There's a number of audience members who they haven't seen it. So it'll introduce this to a whole new generation of people. And then, maybe through that, they go back and if it is good, they'll go back and find the 82 version and see that,
And changing the name is really smart too, because then you're not competing. You're not doing Halloween for the fourth time. Right. You're automatically setting yourself apart by changing the title too.
Right.
Yeah.
That's sort of your way out too of trying to be compared to the Carpenter film.
Yeah. It'll be interesting, but I do think, it's hard to make a good movie just in general, right? One that can withstand the test of time. And so, I think that the 82 version is, although not originally a fan favorite, has continued to gain popularity and hit its peak, and now still has a cult following, and so this one, it'll be hard for them to recapture that. I think no matter how good this next version end up being.
It makes me think. I realized not too long ago, and it's been a long time to sort of realize that when I was a kid, as a child, and watching, say, cartoons of the era, but then also like Bugs Bunny and things like that before I was born, right? And all those, the Merry Melodies, all that stuff, and how they amused me so much, right? But they were also referencing the things of the time, so whether it's pop culture jokes and things like that, like things that phrases, turns of phrase, whether and then even as time went on, and then it was like things that would be referenced in like Saturday Night Live and all that, Steve Martin, excuse me, that came out in other cartoons later. And I thought, well, when I'm watching that cartoon, I'm like, that's where that's from, and that's really amusing. And so all that stuff, learning later that all these things I grew up with that were from generations ago and are referencing other things. I always thought all those things were so interesting and clever and funny, and The Simpsons did that too for many generations of viewers, referencing so many films and pop culture things, and it works for what it is, and you don't even need to know that that's referencing something, and I realized it's okay to it's okay for a new generation to like something or get into it without knowing, well, yeah, but this is the source material, and this was also made, and this is that, and that's important to know. But to be honest, who cares? A lot of times, it's I think it's fascinating to realize all this stuff is so cyclical, and it goes through different generations of interpretation and all of that, and so yeah, people are gonna compare the new thing to the thing, but who goes there? It's it almost doesn't care, as long as if that actually can work on its own and it has some sort of reference or whatever, great. But I'm never going to be the one to be like, but there's all this other stuff. You should watch that because it's better and it existed before you were born and all of that, but like,
Yeah.
and it's just, so I find that I realize that, like, even with, back in the day of those, Warner Brothers cartoons, all that, where it was played in theaters and it was about the news of the day and it was about sort of the culture of the time. And then when you're a kid, like 20 years, 30 years, 40 years later, and watching that, and it's still kind of funny, and you don't even know why it's funny. It's just funny phrases, funny sort of the musicality of these turns of phrases. And so it's all related, right? Like, so isn't that kind of the thing? Like, let them keep remaking things or interpreting the source material, and we can always say, like, hey, this exists, but give it your shot. I think that's intriguing to me.
Yeah, I think reinterpret. I like that phrase that you use, reinterpreting the source material. That there's a big difference between that and remaking the movie over and over and over.
Yeah.
The number one that comes to mind is The Shining, right? So everybody loses their mind that somebody wanted to remake The Shining. Well, the remake of The Shining, keep your opinions to yourself right now, but it wasn't a remake of the Kubrick film. It was a remake, or it was going back to the source material of Stephen King's novel. And I think the same is true with The Thing. I think you absolutely have a point, David, is that people think The Thing is John Carpenter's movie, and The Thing is not John Carpenter's movie. The Thing is a really cool version John Carpenter did of a 1930s novel. Mm-hmm. So a reinterpretation of that original novel, everybody has every right to try that. And for it to immediately be compared to John Carpenter's 82 version is really unfair when you think about it. It's just that he did it so well. That's the same reason why no matter how many times you try and redo The Shining, it's Kubrick's film. And that's what people keep going back to. So I think The Thing kind of falls in that same category. The novel is one thing, but it's really become in pop culture John Carpenter's film, not the original novel.
Sure.
Yeah, I think most people just assume that story is his. They don't even know that there's a novella.
Yeah.
Or even a 51 film. I mean, that people probably, today's audiences probably just don't know it.
I'm a big Steven Weber fan, but he's no
who isn't?
He's no Jack Nicholson, I guess. But
it's a different.
I enjoyed the hell out of that miniseries. To be honest, I really did. It was 3 nights. It was great. It was a lot of fun, and it was, I don't know, not fun, but it was that thing, and it was a different story that compared to The Shining. I don't know. So
it's like it did the same exact thing. And look, the people. This is probably a better example, because what you're saying is, a new audience could find this new version of The Thing and not really care that there was this masterpiece done 34, 40 years ago. It's similar to it. I would say people that are closer to my daughter's age would say, okay, well, cool that Tim Curry was in something that all of you older guys love, but I actually like the new version, and that's okay too. So that's exactly what could happen if this is put in the right hands and handled correctly.
Yeah.
Right. But I still, the point that I was making about, I still think it offers the opportunity for these like younger, newer generations to be introduced to the older stuff as well, which I think is great. Like Tim Curry's It, because we love that version, but had been out of public consciousness for some time, right? And then the new versions kind of brought that back, and everybody absolutely has their own opinion on which version is better. I think they both are great and stand alone separately, but there's always going to be that soft spot for the old, Tommy Lee Wallace version.
Yeah. Well, a new version of Who Goes There or whatever they're going to end up doing, if it actually gets made, is just going to bring, downloads and views to Carpenter's film. It's just going to boost that back up again, as it's already had its kind of cult status elevated. I wouldn't even say it's a cult film anymore, because it's just so popular again that it's just going to get more eyes on it. But let's talk about the development of the 82 film, of Carpenter's film, and kind of how that evolved and where it came from. And In the mid '70s, producers David Foster and Lawrence Terman pitched it to Universal. Universal ended up getting the rights to both the novella and the film. So not necessarily buying. That doesn't mean they bought the thing from another world, but they bought the rights to make another movie. Toby Hooper was originally attached to direct, which would have been. I can't even tell you how different the movie probably would have been had he been a part of it.
It's always weird when you hear those stories, right? Like David Lynch doing, Return of the Jedi or something like that. Like you always wonder what could have been.
Yeah.
He could have done a pretty good job, I would say, but at the same time, his hands were full because this is the same exact year as Poltergeist, which is well, we don't even need to go into that, but
yeah,
you know what I mean.
Right.
It's like he's at least involved in something else right now,
yeah.
And I do think he could have done a good job, but I would say that the things that make the 82 thing stand out are not just doing a good job as a director, it's having a style and a tone that is uniquely John Carpenter. And I think one thing we learned when we did our Assault on Precinct 13 is that he loves going back to those old, films that he loves. He loves siege movies. He loves being isolated in a spot. And I think that this story is ripe for that. And if you have a director who thrives on stories that need to be isolated and put in a hole, it's John Carpenter. It's what he does best. Whereas that's not Toby Hooper's thing. So I think that would have been lost, honestly.
Yeah, I think isolation is a theme in not every one of Carpenter's great films, but a lot of them.
Yeah. And just siege movies in general are kind of a thing. And you have to be kind of holed up and figure out how to get out and how to escape or some way. And it really does bring out the best in Carpenter's chops. And so I think plenty of directors could have handled this competently, but it would have lacked all of what makes this such an amazing film.
Yeah. Well, Universal ended up not being too happy with the drafts of the script that Toby Hooper was putting out, so they kind of stepped away from the project. It goes on hold till 1979 when Alien is released, and the success of Alien brings the project back up. Of course, Carpenter is already riding high from the success of Halloween, so it seems like a good time and a good marriage that maybe this is going to work for John Carpenter. So he gets attached to the project, and then by the time it's really active, he's already coming off of The Fog. He's coming off Escape from New York, which Escape from New York was a hit, wasn't it?
No, not originally. I mean, it was a mild hit, but I would say the theme of John Carpenter's entire career is getting discovered later. I don't know if there's any film that I can think about that he did that really, I mean, Halloween, I guess, had a pretty immediate reaction, but other than Halloween, The Fog a little bit, but
Vampires?
Most of them,
Vampires?
You're right. Yeah. Filmed right down the road. I would say in general, they were mixed reviews is what often gets associated with John Carpenter's films.
Right. But Halloween was such an impactful film and such a huge movie that he could still, even though the rest weren't really hits yet, he could still ride that Halloween wave and, getting really his first big budget film here.
Yeah, well, and The Fog was, I mean, it was a solid movie that it wasn't panned at all. It just wasn't, it maybe didn't have the cultural tidal wave that Halloween did, but it was proving that he could back to back start to become a really competent director. He was a safe bet, I would say.
Yeah.
At this point, he was a safe bet.
And we've actually covered all of those films, which you can check out in the archives at ReconCinemation.com. The Fog, Escape from New York. Not vampires.
Not vampires.
Assault on Precinct 13. It's all there. So Carpenter is a little bit worried, though, about trying to surpass his idol, Howard Hawks. And again, in our Assault on Precinct 13 episode, we talked a lot about his love of Hawks's films and And this, I mean, he even in Halloween, they're watching The Thing from Another World, and you see that beautiful logo that he actually redid.
Yep.
Like exactly in Halloween. So he's a little bit worried about trying to top him, but again, it's going back to the source material and really exploring the themes of paranoia and isolation and really the shape-shifting side of it that really weren't that prevalent in the 51 film. So a few writers kind of come in and write drafts and go, but they settle with Bill Lancaster, who was the son of Burt Lancaster and someone we spoke about as he had written The Bad News Bears. Again, another film in our archives. So Carpenter was a fan of him. The folks at Universal were fans of his. And he really wrote the bulk of the movie, and then especially in later drafts worked it out with Carpenter to really fine tune it. But he's the one who had written the Norris monster scene, which is one of the greatest scenes in the film. The whole blood serum test, which does come from the novella, but really gets, I mean, they kind of just touch on it in there, and we actually have to see it and understand how it works here. He's the one who cut down all the scientists from 37 to 12 and made MacReady really the lead. So
after he saw the headshot of Kurt Russell.
Oh yeah. Oh, he's like, this guy? This is who's going to play? Forget it. Forget everybody else.
Forget about it. Yeah.
And in watching this movie, other than MacReady being a helicopter pilot and then there being 2 doctors and then a radio guy, what do these guys do? What are they studying? What is their specialty? Who are they? What's the deal? They just seem like guys who hung out. They're just hanging out. Who's the microbiologist? Who is the, well,
that's got to be
who's Fuchs. Who's the climatologist? Who's the
Wilford Brimley?
Norris? Or Blair.
I mean, look, no matter what kind of science you do, you live in a science center in Antarctica. You turn grubby and rough and all that. I don't know who are any of these people scientists.
I mean, they could all be scientists. I think you're stereotyping what a scientist looks like right now.
I understand that, but they're all just sort of like whatever. They're getting high and drinking and hanging out. Like that's and 2 of them happen to be doctors. Like.
Fair enough. It is 82. Who knows what happens in Antarctica?
And I suppose the point isn't, it doesn't matter who the climatologist is. Like, oh my God, the weather of from 10,000 years ago, like why would he tell during this story? Why is that important? You wouldn't hear that. But it's funny to think that like these are all like probably like high level people who got advanced degrees in the 60s and 70s and then ended up in Antarctica,
sure,
and then all died. And what a rough time.
I think a lot of science probably is pretty dirty and gritty, though.
Well, and they have other things to do. Like you don't need, like, they have pilots, they have cooks, right, or a cook.
They have a cook.
So yeah.
I don't know. It doesn't matter. It's just funny though. Oh, look at all these scientists.
I can tell you right now who does what.
Who does what?
All right, so Blair is the biologist, right?
There we go.
He's got it. Oh, let's go.
Well, yeah.
Who's the building maintenance supervisor? That's what I want to know.
That one we don't see.
Who fixes the toilets?
You've got Norris is a geologist.
Okay, yeah,
right.
That makes sense.
Okay, you've got Knowles is the cook,
and
you've got the dog handler, which is Clark.
Right.
Yeah. He's
got to have another job than dog handler.
I would hope so.
He's doing more than handling the dog.
You got to take care of the dogs. That's a full-time job. You've got two mechanics, and that is Palmer and Child. Okay, because you got to fix the stuff when it breaks. The science machines.
Yeah.
That's technical.
There's legitimately one scientist in the whole station.
You've got I think Palmer is also a pilot, right? Palmer and MacReady are the pilots. Gary's the commander. And who am I missing?
Wait, who's the one that was in the vehicle with him?
Yeah. So he's all okay. Yeah. Fuchs. Fuchs is a
Fuchs.
biologist also.
Yeah, he seems like
And
a really smart
Copper
guy.
is the doctor. And what's the other? Bennings. I don't know what Bennings does. He's just there.
He gets core samples to study. I think
there you
that's
go.
what he does.
That would be cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
none of the 100%. None of this matters, and I'm just bringing it almost as this like, well, like really, who's the scientists here?
Carpenter cut a lot of the scientists out of the 31.
Because you've got
book.
you got two cooks and maintenance workers, a couple of pilots. You're talking. There's more people supporting a small amount of scientists versus like a lot of scientists. And like there's more support staff than there is.
It's a pretty harsh environment. There probably needs to be a pretty significant support group, though.
You would think there would be probably like maybe 36, 37 people there instead of.
Well, there was in the novel.
See,
there you go. And they do in the novel. They
were on holiday.
They do get into when they introduce each character. They do say like what they do. So
I want to revisit this when the new version comes out, and then you get all 37 characters to be like, maybe I didn't need to know what every single person did. Yeah, it's there's like, so many people.
When you have to introduce all these people, it's like, but all right, this guy, he does this, and he's an expert in this, and she does this, and she's an expert. And then it's like, okay, all right, never mind.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't think anyone does anything other than drink and smoke and do autopsies.
Yeah.
Like that's it.
Well, there's no oversight. You know, the big boss isn't coming to do daily checkups.
Right.
So.
There's no internet. You have to send emails about your daily reports. So they haven't had contact in weeks.
There's just computer chess and a billiards table.
Computer chess, by the way, what, like $1,000 machine that he throws J&B in there, just one game. Boy, McCready.
Voiced by Adrian Barbeau also.
Yeah. That's correct.
Yeah, a perfectly voiced AI.
Yeah.
I go rook to knight 4. It would be like rook to knight 4. Right? Like wouldn't it
Damn
be
it,
that?
you missed a calling, David.
Yeah, for real.
Because it wouldn't be
you got me there.
It wouldn't be a smooth sentence. And I mean that's a lot of moves.
Yeah.
To be pre-recorded.
And they get all the high-end technology out there in Antarctica.
And not only does McCready like waste that machine, he wastes a whole drink on it too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just drink the drink and maybe punch the machine. I don't know.
Or walk away from the machine.
Or just maybe play it tomorrow.
Yeah. But in the original script, in Bill Lancaster's script, the original ending had McCready and Childs, when they come together at the end, both realize both of them are the Thing. And it cuts to the next morning when a rescue helicopter lands, and you see them walking up, like thanking them for the rescue, and that they make it off the island. And so Carpenter wanted a much more, I mean, that's a bleak ending, but I think he wanted a not a questionable ending, but an open-ended.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
it's a great ending. You can only assume that they both can't be things. So either neither of them are things or one of them is, and that's exciting.
And there was another ending filmed. I mean, I don't know when you want to discuss that, but there's a
lot to talk about with that ending. So let's
pretty
work
interesting.
our way there.
But there is more discussion in that area.
Oh yeah, there's a huge amount to talk. There's a lot of theories. But so this is Carpenter's first big budget film. He's got a $15 million budget, which is a huge amount more than what he had for Halloween, which was what, 400,000 or something. And so he's come a long way in about 4 years. And but 1.5 million, I think, was the budget for the makeup effects for Rob Bottin's effects, and
well spent,
which are fantastic.
I gotta say, well spent, unbelievably good. Like, oh my god, there's stuff that came out 15 years later than that can't even match.
There's stuff now that doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, holy crap! It's design and execution to such a perfection.
Yeah,
I just wow. Like every time I watch this movie, I'm like, really? They did this in '82? Like, holy shit! Like,
he got every penny out of that budget, and I don't think it was very easy. Apparently, after after the shoot was done, he went like almost directly to the hospital with like exhaustion and double pneumonia, and he's like got ulcers and all sorts of stuff. But yeah, he definitely made that budget work for some incredible effects.
And you believe it too. I mean, when you see, when McCready and Copper take the, or wait, do they? I'm trying to remember how we get the first like sample that Blair is studying on the table, right? When he cuts it open and like peels the skin off, and you see all the bone that he's looking at. Like, it's so intricate that you could believe like that's a you don't even know what that is. It's not bone. It's not like tendon or ligament. It's just some kind of plasticky looking structure, but it's so detailed and intricate. It's amazing.
Yeah, or like in the Norris scene where like, I mean, his head is detached and there's all this just like
the
weird
goo.
like bubbling goo and sacks and all this weird just like visceral shit just like everywhere, and you're just like, oh my goodness.
Also, I would say, given credit where credit's due too, is I think that what makes the thing so iconic and such a cult status is these special effects and this gore and stuff like that. And what is insane to think about is he was 22 at the time. Rob was a kid, and he had not done anything like this yet to this level. He had done some stuff, but nothing like this. And in addition to that, he's the one that came up with all the ideas of everything taking different forms and stuff like that. Like, he came to Carpenter with this idea. So when we think about what makes the thing some of the most iconic moments, it's a 22-year-old kid who's like, hey, I got a brilliant idea. You're doing the thing. What if instead of making it one creature, we make it all these different versions that shape-shifting in different forms, and I'll figure out how to do all the effects. By the way, did I mention I'm 22? Like, it's insane.
Holy crap.
Yeah, that's
I can now legally have a beer.
Yeah. To give somebody that much creative freedom on the biggest project you have ever done, I mean, says volumes. And when you hear Carpenter talk about him, Rob's abilities, not everything went smooth, and we can talk about that later, but he also knew this guy, there was something about this guy that he could pull it off. And when you hear Rob talk about John, why this worked is because these two just were on the same wavelength, and this is the perfect time. It all came together in one glorious moment called The Thing, where you have somebody willing to take as many risks as possible because they need to make a name for themselves, and then you have somebody else who's more seasoned who says, I need somebody to take risks because this needs to stand out and not be forgettable. And those two balanced each other perfectly. It really is, it's John Carpenter's film, but it's also really Rob Bottin's film too. I mean, this is his moment. This is going to be forever the film that he will always be linked to.
Yeah. And on top of that, it's really a combination too with Dean Cundy's cinematography. That the way he lights all the effects work. It's really important that he doesn't overlight it, because then we're going to see that it's an effect and not feel like it's real and genuine, a genuine part of the story. So, especially with things like the Blair monster and the whole Norris scene and Palmer and, his head situation that happens. But, you have to very carefully light those so it doesn't feel fake. And so it was really the three of them working together too.
But what's crazy is when you go back to it, you hear him talk about lighting those scenes. It's because Rob was on him about doing less light. And so, again, the influence that Rob had over this film, I think, can't be, overstated. As yes, you have this amazing cinematography, but he's also getting pointers on how to do his job from a 22-year-old special effects artist saying, look, if you want my stuff to look good, you need to use less light. And the fact that he even listened to him instead of saying, shut up and go sit in the corner until we call you, says volumes about the team effort that went into this. Like, they all just kind of believed in each other. And that sounds corny, but it really is true. Like, I think that they trusted in the team, and that's why this turned out the way it did.
Yeah, I mean Carpenter's team, he used a lot of the same crew for his early films, and you can feel that, like you said, that you can feel that teamwork, and it's just going to help him. It's going to make it easier for the creative juices to flow.
Where would we see Bottin after this? Where would we? Is there more iconic things that he was involved with?
Yeah, you could say so. He went on to do some big ones. Well, just to back up real quick, just if,
Sure.
especially for your listeners, if they don't know how he got involved, is he was a massive fanboy of John Carpenter and wanted to work with him. So when Carpenter was working on The Fog, he managed to weasel his way into getting a meeting and working a little bit on The Fog. So he found a way to work with Carpenter,
Wow.
and in basically 1 year, not only introduced himself, but became the lead special effects artist for his next big movie. But he went on to do things like Legend, Witches of Eastwick, a little film some of you may know called RoboCop. I mean, like
Total Recall. Like,
yeah,
Never heard
of
of
it. He has a career.
Yeah.
But I would say, even with all those amazing accomplishments, everybody, when you hear other people in the business, especially people like Stan Winston and stuff, talk about him, they all go back to The Thing and say, this is when this guy came out on his own. This was his coming out party, of saying, like, I am here, I am a force, and you will remember my name after you watch The Thing. And
he
couldn't he just pushed the boundaries on this one.
Yeah, he couldn't have come out any earlier. He would have been in elementary school. So
it's very bold. It's really,
it's amazing.
It's pretty amazing. And when you hear him talk about the gags that they had to do, all the setups and stuff, like they were figuring it out on the spot. It's the classic 20-year-old, like, sure, I can do that. And then you're sitting there going, well, shit, like, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but we'll do it. And they did it.
Yeah. And didn't he, at a certain point, he just walked away from the business too?
Yeah, it does seem like he was riding high and then just gave himself a kind of a break, which was probably a smart thing to do.
Yeah, I believe he stepped away entirely from the business. And I heard, this may not be true, but I heard he handles like high-end real estate now, and that's his new career. And he does an occasional interview, but really doesn't do much.
I think he did something for Game of Thrones, though.
Yeah, he has been involved in that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what.
More recently, but before that, like the last thing that he had really done was early 2000s.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
I think his days are long past of sleeping, in the studio floor,
Right.
waking up and going back to work. I think those days are long over.
Well, and now we have a special guest. Come on in, Rob Bottin. Thank you.
Nice hair.
We're out of microphones though, so they just have to...
He's saying brilliant things though over just to the side.
But so he had 1.5 million for his budget. The movie originally was budgeted at about 12.5 million. So quickly it skyrocketed. Larry Franco, who is one of Carpenter's regular producers, had to find ways to like bring the budget back down so they could actually make the film. They doubled the Norwegian camp. They shot it at the end of the film. They used the American camp to destroy it and make it the Norwegian camp instead of having two giant sets. They just straight out, as we'll talk about, I'm sure, they cut Null's death scene. There was a big elaborate thing planned for that, and they were like, you know what? What if we don't know? That's even worse.
We just kill him off screen, maybe.
Yeah. But the thought of what happened to him is like completely haunting. That you see him walking into the shadow, you hear nothing, but like he's been taken at a minimum. And Benning's death was in a big elaborate set and was a much bigger makeup effect, and they just cut that down to something very simple that can be done outside, no sets. So right there, trimming all that helped bring the numbers back down. But let's talk a little bit about our friend who's about to celebrate his birthday. We're going to talk about Kurt Russell right now. So this is a huge movie for Kurt. I mean, he's coming off of Escape from New York, and he's successfully shaken the child actor, stigma that he had. He's gotten away from Disney. We kind of talked about his whole career last year. But this one was the next step in being taken seriously. I mean, you can't get a more serious role than this, really. And of course, with those locks, you just success was right there.
You can't beat it.
I think what's really stood out the last time I watched this was being aware of his versatility, because, you know, coming off of Escape from New York, where Snake is this real cocky kind of character. He's like a comic book character almost. And I just associate that with, well, that's just Kurt Russell. But then when you watch this subdued kind of serious tone in The Thing, and you realize they're back to back, I don't know if people maybe give him as much credit as they do, because I think oftentimes you think of Kurt Russell as Kurt Russell, like, yep, it's Kurt Russell in a movie. Not to say he's as, you know, like Sean Connery, where he's just going to be Sean Connery no matter what. He is he's got some range, but I don't think it's as obvious. It's more subtle. And I think the best example is this. You get Escape from New York to The Thing, the same lead actor, but this is not the same person at all. You're not just seeing Kurt Russell in another movie. And I think that really goes a long way. It was a smart cast. I really do think this is a great performance, because he's not over the top. He's not taking over the show. He's doing what's required of him, and he's doing it really well.
Yeah. And this was the third collaboration between Carpenter and Russell at this point. They did the Elvis TV film, which, right? Don't you have a copy of that?
I do. Yeah. It's a really good movie too. I highly recommend it if you're a Kurt Russell fan. As far as TV movies go, it's a strong one.
Yeah. And then Escape from New York, and then The Thing, and they'd end up doing a total of 5 projects together, I believe. They did Big Trouble in Little China, took a long break, did Escape from LA, and have taken an even longer break, but they're still great friends, and they do a lot of appearances together and interviews together. So just, you know, careers went different directions, and I do think that Kurt could have played the lead role in They Live, but Roddy Piper's fine.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Do we think that role was meant for Kurt, and then
it had to have been?
He was.
It had to
decided
have been.
Not to. I mean, Rowdy was awesome. I mean, like, he was great. He killed it. But yeah, Kurt.
My thought was always it was intended to be Kurt. Kurt at the time was, you know, his star was on the rise, was doing a lot of projects, probably not available after Big Trouble, and I don't know, and maybe he wanted to just do more away from Carpenter too at the time. So
sure.
But I would love to see another reality where he stars in that movie, and what the end result would have been. But
I think the last real collaboration that was a potential, like a real potential for Kurt to come back on board with Carpenter, would have been Ghost from Mars, when it was intended to be the third installment of the Escape trilogy. I think that Kurt Russell was kind of supposed to be part of that. And because Escape from LA was such a flop, it was like, well, let's just scrap that and go a different direction. And then you get Ice Cube, you know, so, which I'm not going to complain. I really, as a fan of John Carpenter, it's a fun watch, but it's no Escape from New York, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I could have seen him as the James Woods role in Vampires. And then were they talking about Escape? Wasn't there like, I heard there was one in development called Escape the World or something.
Escape from Earth or something. Yeah.
Yeah. So who knows? Maybe
one
day.
Yeah. That could have been the Mars one that got repurposed.
Yep. Maybe that was it. But you know, there were other actors in play here, so let's get into the rest of the cast. David's favorite segment of the show: who's in this movie? So other people that were up for McCready were Christopher Walken, Nick Nolte, Jeff Bridges. And believe it or not, the legendary, another icon of this show, Tom Atkins, was up for McGreedy. I think they did the right thing here. No offense to any of those actors, especially everyone knows we love Tom Atkins, but I think that was the right choice going with Kurt.
Yeah, no, I mean Kurt always knocks it out of the park, no matter what he does. And yeah, those might be interesting choices, but clearly we have the best already.
Yeah. And there's a lot of names that were up for roles in this that were almost cast. Just to throw names out there, not saying who they were up for, but Brian Dennehy, Chris Christopherson. I could that would have been weird, but I could see he looks like McCready. I could see
Yeah.
that look, but
Mhm.
John Hurd, Ed Harris, Tom Berenger, Scott Glenn, Fred Ward, Peter Coyote, and Donald Pleasance was almost cast as Blair,
Wow.
Wow.
and would have been, except he was on another project and not available. So it would have been really cool to see him continue his Carpenter relationship and play the Blair role.
Yeah, it would have been great.
When talking about people who almost got these roles, this is, even though he is perfect for this role, I would say, because there's a lot less expected and demanded of him in this role. It's like I said, it's a little bit more subdued. I think that this would have been the time where other people could have played this part and the film could have maybe still succeeded, versus when we talk about somebody else getting the role of Snake Plissken or Jack Burton or something like
Mhm.
that, like these really over the top demanding roles where you have to be a character. That's where it's going to be like, there's no way you could have gone any other direction but Kurt Russell. I'm glad they went with Kurt with the Thing, but realistically, his character was not nearly as demanding as some of the other roles he's done with John Carpenter, that I'm sure that somebody like John Hurd or something like that, Christopherson even, yeah, they could have pulled it off, but I don't think that it would have had that charm. And in the long run, we probably didn't know it at the time until after Big Trouble in Little China, part of what people love about John Carpenter's films is Kurt Russell. And so to
Right.
not have him in this would have, maybe had a long-term effect too. But I just wanted to throw that out there that, when I think about somebody else getting the role for Snake, I'm like, no way, no
Yeah.
way. But this one's maybe not as insane to think about somebody else getting a
Yeah.
role.
No, it's there's right. There's not. I mean, all these characters, because of the situation in the story, there's really kind of one note that they're all playing, and that's
Mhm.
that suspense and paranoia feeling that they have to ride that wave. Like there's no like comedy parts, there's no emotional drama to it. It's survival really. So, yeah, it's I actually could see Nick Nolte at the time, 1981's, Nick Nolte playing McCready.
Oh yeah.
Um, the child's role almost went to Isaac Hayes and Bernie Casey, which would have been Isaac Hayes. Would have made sense coming off Escape from New York.
Mhm.
But the cast we did get, I think they're all. I mean, I like so many of these actors, and not all of them really. This is maybe some of their biggest movies, but. Great actors. We've got Keith David making his, I think, first movie appearance here.
Oh, really? Because he's
Yeah.
gone on to do a lot.
Oh
Yeah.
man, he's iconic.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's still acting. He's still super active today, doing a lot of voiceovers and commercials now, and he's been in so many great movies. And the fight scene in They Live is just the alley fist fight scene with Roddy Piper is fantastic.
Yeah,
All right, now
there's-
rethink that scene if Kurt Russell was that character.
It would have been a whole different level of depth there.
Well, you can tell Roddy helped choreograph that fight. Right?
Oh, yeah.
It's very much a wrestling fight.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Yes.
so it'd have been very different. But it was great. That was a great fight. It's a great scene.
We've got Charles Hallahan as Norris, another actor who's been in a number of Kurt Russell movies. He's in Silkwood. He's in this. He's in Executive Decision, and I think there's one more where they appear together. That I don't. I'm assuming they had to have been friends or something. That he kept showing up in Kurt's movies. But a really good performance as Norris, and just seems like a genuine sort of nice guy. And then you see what happens to him, and it's like awful.
Yeah, bad news.
Donald Moffat, I've thought he was great in Clear and Present Danger, and again, so many movies through the 80s and 90s. He plays Commander Gary. Richard Dysart as Copper, the doctor, with for some reason like a nose ring.
Yeah.
Anybody-
Yeah.
I
the
didn't get that.
60-year-old man or whatever. He's got the nose ring.
Yeah, like I
Yeah,
want to
good
know
for
that
him.
guy's backstory.
Yeah, I want to
Yeah.
watch the prequel that's about him.
Oh my God, Wilford Brimley as Blair. Now, again, he'd been acting through this at least the 70s, but really doesn't become a name until the 80s, and it's really this and what Cocoon that sort of make him that iconic Wilford Brimley, and then all the Quaker Oats commercials.
Sure.
Yeah. Is it really this and Cocoon? I feel like he was
Well, they're
around
not-
in other stuff. He'd done a lot of TV stuff, right?
Sure, yeah, I think it was This Old House, right? He starred in for years, and
This old house.
was it This Old House? Not This Old House.
That's the repair
Nope,
show.
that's the Bob Vila show.
Yeah,
Bob
that is
Vila.
the Bob Vila show.
It's there's something similar to that.
Welcome to my house.
But yeah, I don't think he's just another actor that had sort of a late start in his at least his movie career, and then was in a million movies. Like
He's a
Remo
diabetes
Williams.
guy too, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
the diabetes. Yep.
Yeah. I just always think of John Goodman doing the skit. Yeah.
He was also in China Syndrome.
Right. That's right. He was in China Syndrome. Yep.
Yep.
Check it out in the archives, ReconCinemation.com.
And then he was in that TV show Our House, but that was after
Our
this movie in
House.
'86.
Come on.
Yeah.
I
I
was
watched
so
that.
close.
I watched like a couple episodes of that or a little bit.
Wasn't
was
Shannon Doherty on that as a little kid?
I believe so. Let me
Yeah.
see here.
He was also in the Waltons,
Oh, yeah.
which was a popular TV show.
Which
back in
was
the 70s.
Like a prequel to Our House.
it probably was.
And then he quit that and went to a research station in Antarctica.
Yeah.
I forgot he was in Remo Williams
Yeah, the adventure begins and ends.
and ends. Unfortunately, damn it. Still waiting for the sequel.
That's a movie. Our friend Jay Blake Fischera covered it on Saturday Night Movie Sleepovers, but I really want to cover it here at some point in time. So
Please.
that'll be a good one with a great theme song. TK Carter as Knowles, you would know him from Saved by the Bell, or as we knew it, Good Morning, Miss Bliss.
Mm.
So,
But he was, but other things too, right? Wait.
oh yeah,
Ski
he was
School?
Ski School. Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
Fan?
Don't you dare forget Ski School. We've talked about that here.
I'm a big fan of Ski School.
Joel Polis, who plays Fuchs. I know he's been in things, but I don't really recognize him from much else. I think, but a great role here as Fuchs, a character who we don't really see exactly what happens to Fuchs, but I know they've filmed multiple fates for him.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there was various versions where they don't find him at all. They find the burned, remains, which is what's in the film now. They also found him like with a shovel through him, kind of hung up against a door. So either way, it doesn't end well for Fuchs.
Yes.
Can
Curtains.
everyone clarify then? So does the thing, let's say the thing is the dog, right? And then there's Fuchs and they're in the same room. Does the dog become Fuchs and then kill Fuchs, or does the dog or the dog thing invade Fuchs's body and is the thing? But meaning the thing is cloning itself, and so at a certain point there's two of the same person, right? Is that the idea? Is that because you don't see it,
Or is it eating the thing, eating the victim and becoming, because I mean it does have
right? Because if
quite
Fuchs is burned
a
up
mouth.
if Fuchs ends up dying the way he dies, then that means Fuchs, there was a Fuchs.
No. I think what happens with Fuchs is he hears something. So he's working in the lab, right?
Yeah.
McCready comes by. They have their dialogue. McCready leaves, and then he hears somebody walk by or something go by, and he follows that unsure if it's McCready or not. He follows that thing most likely out into the snow, and I always assumed it to be the thing turned on him and was about to, consume him, and he had the flare and lit himself on fire.
Just so the
either by accident or intentional, he lit himself on fire, killing himself before the thing takes him.
So the thing takes over a person.
Yeah.
And obviously it can spread and multiply. So there's other things that take over things, over people.
Is it
right?
like what's the organism? Like a polarium or do you know what I'm talking about? It's like a flatworm, right? Where like if you cut it in half, it'll grow, and then it'll be like two flatworms. Is it kind of like that, where like it can just like spread into each of the?
Well, we see
because
it
like when Norris's head falls off and it goes running off, like I mean, Norris's body is still doing a thing, the head's doing a thing. They're like two separate things going on. Right. So,
well, this is a lot. All right, let's get into it before we'll come back to the rest of the cast. But like,
I mean, we don't have. No, I mean,
no.
This is not the right place. I apologize.
All right, then before we'll come right back to it. Let's finish the cast. We've got Richard Masur, who plays Clark, who also appears in It, which we were just talking about, in so many movies, Shoot to Kill. He actually, interestingly enough, turned down E.T. for this movie, which I think, I don't know if I'd say he regrets it, but it's definitely like, what could have been.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to play Elliot or the role he played, I mean, it's a tough choice. It's amazing he was going to play Elliot.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Right.
But it's funny that he was up for E.T., Peter Coyote was up for The Thing, and
they
ended up with Peter Coyote in E.T. David Clennon as Palmer, who's, I think, kind of almost the only comic relief in the movie for about 5 minutes, and then it's just serious. But Thomas Waits, who we would know from The Warriors, if anyone's seen that movie, as Windows. And let's see, Peter Maloney as Bennings. And Peter Maloney's been in so many movies also. He was in Manhunter, a short role in that. But all great performances for what the roles were here. But
right.
Okay, so let's come back to what we were just talking about. Let's talk about how the thing works and the sort of the questions that come along with it. So, and I think, the Carpenter does his best to really answer those questions when we're with Blair, as Blair's studying the thing and watching his amazingly advanced 1982 computer situation. But you see the thing, the cell that is a thing, right, literally like grabs other cells and consumes them, basically like ingests them and then duplicates it. But it's inside, it's really the thing. The original cell is no more. So
right, because even when they did the autopsy, they saw the regular human organs inside that thing that was there, right? But like, so okay, so it takes you over and becomes you.
Yeah, and the only time we really see it is a quick shot when Bennings is when Windows comes back in the storage room and sees Bennings being consumed, and he's just wrapped in tentacles and blood, and you can't really tell what stage that's in. Is that the beginning or is that the end? Is that
it's no part I want to be.
Part, yeah. And then the question that comes up is, what happens to the original you?
Right.
Once you've been consumed, do you have memories? Are you sort of trapped inside, like then you're stuck inside the thing's body, or are you just completely gone?
I don't know. Something that I really like about it too is this idea that it doesn't just replicate one thing and that's what it becomes. It's kind of like Terminator 2, where it can pick and choose. Once it's taken a form, it can do that form again, or Shang Tsung from Mortal Kombat, if we want to go there.
Oh, like yeah.
Depending on which code you put in, you can be any player. But imagine if you screwed up the codes and you became 4 players at one time. That's what I really, really love about this design is that there are brief moments where you see it being more than one form that it's taken on already at the same time. That I think is really innovative for special effects and for storytelling, and really terrifying when you think about it, because as viewers, we can really wrap our head around, okay, well, it took over this guy, now it looks like this guy. But we can't really go, well, now he's kind of this crab blob with a dog head coming out of one spot. And it's got the ability to take on the form once it's accepted it, but it doesn't necessarily have to be only that form. I just think that's so cool. That's such a
many possibilities.
Fascinating. That's sci-fi right there. Like that's what makes this film a really brilliant sci-fi movie, is that it's not taking the easy way out conceptually.
So do we see any forms that it takes in the movie that it may have taken before the movie started?
We don't really we don't know. That's the thing. We don't know what, we realize that the first thing is trapped in the ice for 20 million years, right?
Right.
Something like that. We don't know what it's seen before it came to Earth. So we don't know.
And it obviously disposed of the Norwegians as well.
Right.
And whatever was there.
But that shit, the monstery kind of shapes that it is that it's normal, or something similar to its normal shape, or is that another being that it ingested from some other planet? Like, there's no way to answer that question.
Yeah, the like spider legs or the crab legs. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Did it consume a crab or a spider at some point?
Right.
Or is that its natural, form? I think that's what's really cool, is it mixes all these things and it just becomes like body horror. It becomes like a Cronenberg film at this point, where it's just pure body horror.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's and just the thought of, I think my theory and many people's theories, that you are no longer you. So it's a copy of you. So you're dead, but it's taken your memories and thoughts and sort of merged it with its own. Mm-hmm. So it's like basically like copied you into itself.
Yeah, it consumes you and then it can be you, right? Yeah. Like that's kind of.
But you're gone.
So it's like Body Snatchers, but it's not a second body. It's just you.
Right.
Like you're taken over and replaced by, but essentially using your original body kind of thing.
But then when it splits, is that two things, or is that really one, two bodies, but one sort of central mind?
I mean, that we can never know, right?
No, and they do touch on that in the novella, that it once it splits, it is sort of separate beings, because there's confrontations that they're all trying to figure it out, and they realize one thing has killed another thing, not realizing it was a thing, thinking it was a human.
Oh, so they didn't even, in the novella, they didn't recognize each other?
Right.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Because I would think they would know.
You would think, yeah. But like when the Norris, splits into multiple things, are they two separate things? It seems like maybe not.
It seems like that they can exist separately, but that they are maybe genetically the exact same thing. Because going back to this tapeworm idea or whatever, I remember correctly reading up on that, because it was weird too, is that when it's cut in half, it can exist on its own, but that if you study it, the DNA is identical, meaning that it is not two separate beings. They are moving independently, but technically speaking, it is absolutely the exact same creature. It just now exists in two different forms. Right. That's in real life. This is the actual.
Yeah, that's a real thing. Yeah.
So that's what I think when I watch the thing, is I think, the head running off as a little spider creature while the body's spazzing out. They are independently doing their own things. But if you were to take like a tissue sample and study it, they're the exact same creature. It's just now got two different versions of itself.
Yeah.
So you have to wonder, is the creature of the thing, is that some sort of creature or parasite that is on this round UFO alien ship, that like an intelligent species, like designed, built, manufactured, launched, figured out interstellar space, or Or
Yeah.
is it actually, or is the thing the actual creature that did all of those things? Is this just some sort of parasite? Like, like, was there some species that came at that time but was taken over by the thing or whatever?
Yeah.
And then now it's just using, it's like, well, because the thing's job is to continue to populate and spread. So is this an alien parasite from whatever planet 20 million years ago that took over an intelligent being and then continue to spread? Like, that's fascinating, right?
Yeah.
Like that's kind of neat. Like,
This is one of the reasons this movie is the gift that keeps on
there's so much
Yeah.
there to talk
Yeah.
about, because
There's
I can't
brilliant.
imagine the thing designed a UFO, an interstellar spaceship.
Yeah.
No, because
And
it
had a
just seems
space
like
program.
a hostile, parasite that is out to
Yeah.
devour, right?
No, but it also seems like it's incredibly self-aware and knows that it doesn't want to just live in an abandoned outpost in Antarctica, that it wants to find a new host and keep populating and moving.
Yeah.
So by any means necessary, if that means taking over the pilot of a spacecraft and then crashing into another planet, it's not going to go, cool, well, I'm here now. It's going to say, well, how do I get to the next place?
Mhm.
And so it does seem to have some intelligence where it's not just consuming and killing and replicating, but it's actually got motivation and intent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and just like what's his face was building this spaceship in the underground, right? Like,
Yeah, Blair.
The Blair thing was building the spaceship, maybe because it took that information from its original, like, the host of that alien thing, like building a spaceship. I mean, it could, and again, it could go either way. If I were to guess, I would say it's intelligent, but it's not exactly a science-based intelligence. But who knows? I mean, I'm using my Earth human being bias to determine
Earthbound.
that science did not, determine like what its goals in life. So really fascinating stuff that, alien, like, is it an alien race doing this, or is it an alien parasite doing this? And why is it better than all of those Alien sequels we got in the last 10 years?
There's so many more questions than there are answers, but that's with the whole movie. But that's kind of where the brilliance of the film is, and there's so much that we don't know or we don't see, like Blair, the whole Blair storyline. That obviously Blair is human when we first see him. You would think that when he's studying it and we're watching him see the computer screen, has he been taken by? The more I watch it, I feel like Blair is probably overtaken pretty quickly when he's got the thing on the table and he's peeling it off. He's touching it. He's touching the parts that will, like, easily, kind of like take over him when the rest of them are not around.
No gloves.
So no, yeah, I think he's got light gloves, but
but his notes say that it happens on a cellular level. So
Yeah.
the difference between a dog like throwing tentacles and to absorb you versus the cells. So it's going to take a little more time for Blair to be taken over.
Well, and that's where maybe the whole situation with Blair is different. That it is a slower transition for him, and he, when he's reading that computer readout about how fast it can take over society, maybe that's really the thing driving that. And that's what he's not scared by that. He's actually like, oh, good. This is how, if I can get out of here, this is how fast I can do it.
Mm-hmm.
And then when he goes crazy and starts dismantling the helicopters and shooting at everybody and going nuts in the communications room, that maybe that is his plan, to be isolated so that he can be by himself and figure out how to build this ship, and he can burrow out of that, the cabin and work on his project while they're all dealing with the rest of the story. So watching it now, like, I always thought that he's human until he's in the cabin, and then it finds a way in and he's cornered and it just gets him. But now when I watch it, I think he's been taken much, much earlier. We just don't see it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. And there's so many other things, like
so many ways to play it.
Yeah. Like, we really, when the movie opens, all we're seeing is two guys in a helicopter chasing a dog, shooting at it. of course, your sympathies are with that dog. That's exactly where Carpenter puts you. You don't know anything about the Norwegian camp or what's happened there. And by the time we see it, again, more questions than answered. How can there be somebody sitting here who slit his own throat and then immediately froze to death? You know, and like, what was so horrible that would drive somebody to do that? And then the clues of the size of the thing and the chunk of ice and that's now empty. And, you know, we don't get those answered in this film. We do later on, which we'll talk about. But, you know, and how did the dog become a thing? We don't see any of that. It's just like, this is where it starts, right? Whatever we see, like, we have no information prior to that. The dog's name was Jed, who played an amazing performance. Should have won an Oscar.
Yeah.
But the scene in the kennel is sort of your first big reveal. Really, it is. That's the reveal of what is truly going on here and the horrific situation that they're all in. And it's symbolic, you know, for the rest of the film, that those dogs represent all of the humans who are in this cage, being the outpost and Antarctica in general, cornered by this creature.
Yeah, and what a performance. Yeah, I read in an interview, they asked the dogs afterwards, you know, what were the conditions like to film? And you know what their response was? Rough.
Oh my goodness.
You can't top that one.
I'm just stating the interview that I read.
Yeah.
And that's our show.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
That's awesome.
That is a tough scene to watch for any animal lover, that to see a bunch of dogs get tortured, even animatronic or not, was a tough one to sit through.
Well, and that first opening, you know, scene too, that's really amazing, is that was done by Stan Winston. So, you know, going back to this idea, you know, Rob was young and he took on a lot, and he maybe bit off way more than he could chew. So they did contact Stan, the legendary Stan Winston, and said, can you just come in and like relieve us a little bit? And so Stan was in charge of that scene and gives full credit to Rob. You know, he says, this is Rob's film. We were happy to be a part of it. But that scene is really awesome. I mean, it is.
Yeah.
It is. What a way to set the tone of you know, what you're in for. So
yeah. I mean, that the intensity of it is like at a 12. You know, it's insane. And then so after the thing has taken a few of the dogs, and then a couple of the dogs escape. I mean, you feel so sad for them. They're so desperate. They're just chewing the metal wire off to just make a hole, you know. You see it become something else, and its head becomes almost like a flower type thing, or like a opening of a Venus flytrap, and just goes rocketing towards Childs, I think, right? Isn't it like headed straight at him? And then McCready comes in with the flamethrower. But you know, then it's finally like, whoa, like what the hell is this?
You know, and the going back to that brilliance of Rob's kind of creativity with these creatures, instead of just going the basic route. I learned this when I was watching the making of. He said that if you were to freeze frame that flower-like creature that blossoms out of that form when it opens up and comes at them right before they hit it, he said what that actually is a bunch of dog tongues with dog teeth, that basically the creature is in the middle of trying to figure out the form of the dogs. And so it looks like a flower, but I mean, how surreal is that? That's like a H.R. Giger or a Salvador Dali painting, you know, like it's these weird forms. I love that, because had he have not explained that in the making of, I would have never put that together. But the thought that this creative dude was like, how about it's got this weird flower thing, but the flowers are made out of dog tongues and it's got dog teeth. And Carpenter's like, hell yeah, that's a great idea.
It's like,
And it's a
Let's
split
do
second
it.
decision. It only lasts a split second, but that's when we talk about new readings on this and being able to revisit it and find new things, is like not just the story, not just the character acting, not just the drama, but even in the effects alone, you can find little tiny things that you didn't see maybe the last time you saw it that keep pointing to how brilliant and how innovative and forward thinking this film really was. There's a reason why it found an audience later. They keep saying that. It's because you needed it on home video. You needed to be able to pause it and go, what the hell came out of that creature?
Yeah.
Are those dog tongues? Like you couldn't do that in the theater. That's why this film was just too wild. It's just out there, and you needed time to digest it.
Yeah. And it's really made to rewatch. Like we were talking about earlier, that there's so much going on that you need to sort of go back and track what's happening and exactly like what's happening in these scenes, but what might be happening elsewhere that we're not seeing. But this is where, after the dog scene, that's really where they see it. Everybody sees that it is a monster. It is that is now loose in the building, and the paranoia sets in. So your themes of mistrust and betrayal and paranoia are prevalent starting right here, when now they're like, okay, so who is dealing with the dogs? Clark, immediately is the like number one suspect right there. But kind of forgetting that Blair also has, a carcass that he's studying, and maybe Fuchs is also dealing with it as well, like hands on. So already there's like multiple people that could be things. So Benning's death scene is brief, but that shot of him turning to the camera with the hand that's been changed, and he just emits that scream, like that's chilling. Like that's a moment that got me. But apparently not Kurt Russell, because he just kicks over the gasoline and lights him on fire.
Yeah.
And it's so horrifying, because if not for those hands, give it another 5 minutes, no one would know who he is, like, and it's just and they're all like encircling him, just like the way they all the other camp encircled the UFO. Like they see this thing, and it's frightening, like that. And this is someone they've been living with for so long, like that's it looks just like him, and then it turns into this thing, because it's not like this, like scrubbed version. It's him, like his hairline, his
right,
it's
a perfect duplication. Yeah,
so it's just like that's like, and I think us as an audience getting to see that, if you like could apply that to your own life, of like, what if, like, the people or whatever, like this happened, that'd be terrifying. Like,
yeah.
Just, and not like Body Snatchers way. Like, this is different. This is like a whole other, like, I don't know. There's something to it.
This movie plays a little bit differently now post COVID too. That like the way that COVID works is that, you don't know who has it. You're in a room with people, like one or two or three people have it. You don't know who does. There's no way to tell until it's too late. And it's like, what are you going to do? How are you going to trust anybody? How can you start socializing? Of course, we've seen it sort of calm down a little bit since then, but in the beginning, especially, like, I kept thinking about this movie a lot as that was going on.
Who's infected? The paranoia is real.
Yeah. I mean, it's so even again, like we talked about that's why a movie like this will stand the test of time, because it'll fit other things that are going on in each era. Here it was the beginning of the AIDS epidemic, of not knowing who has a deadly secret in the room that maybe they don't even know. And then now, it's COVID and who knows what else. And before was McCarthyism in the 50s. And so it seems to keep a relevance in that way. But There's a lot of like trick cinematography that Carpenter's doing in this movie that sets up things later on. There's certain shots where Kurt Russell sitting close to the camera, but the foreground or the background is in focus. They're using a split diopter lens, like all over the place in this movie, and that's a lens that Brian De Palma used all the time in so many of his movies, just ad nauseum. Here, it's used much more selectively and effectively. That it's setting up things like there's shots where in the blood serum test where we see Kurt Russell holding the serum and we see his hand there, and we see the shot, we cut away, we cut back to the same shot, and then that's where the blood sort of erupts from there. But it's sort of setting it up like normal shot, but the next time we see it, some stuff's going to happen.
Yeah.
So
that's freaky. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, it's such a great tension builder too, like that whole sequence of all that, and then and it's not like, oh, it happens at the end of it. They still have to test people after after this exciting moment, Like,
yeah, well, before we even
just adds chaos to the situation, right?
Yeah,
because it's like now you've got people who are tied up that you don't know whether or not they're infected or not at that point, but they're playing as if, or they don't know if they're infected, and they're terrified of the situation. I mean, it's great. It's another one of the many iconic kind of moments in this movie, if not the most iconic.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple. I mean, they for the next kind of chunk of the movie, it's really a lot of it is about, who can you trust? And like nobody trusts Clark.
Who do you trust?
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry.
But McCready's trying to sort of step forward as the leader because Gary, the commander, clearly doesn't seem willing to really lead the charge there. And, they're all kind of pointing fingers at each other. And then to the point where McCready kills Clark out of really self-defense. But is McCready the thing? Did he just kill somebody right in front of everybody else? Was Clark the thing? Who knows? So, and then people start to mistrust McCready, and Knowles, leaves him out in the winter storm to die because he thinks McCready's the thing. And while that's happening, we have the great shot of Kurt in the storeroom, like frozen, holding dynamite in the blowtorch, and like that's a brilliantly lit shot with like red and blue lighting on either side of his face, and we don't know. Like we're like, could he be the thing? Is it sort of good and evil battle there? But then that leads to the Norris scene, which is one of the greatest special effects scenes. That moment where Norris is having a heart attack, disrupting all this mistrust that they go into like EMT mode. And as Copper does the defibrillator and then goes to do it again. So you're set up to think nothing's going to happen, and boom, like chest opens up, like become teeth, and chops off Copper's arms, like amazing. And then you're in insanity, like it's just pure insanity from then on.
Right.
So Copper's out, Clark is out, Norris clearly is out, but then the head, as they're like attacking the body, the head escapes, and another great shot of Palmer and McCready as they like notice it kind of walking by. It's just genius, just like absurd.
The hell?
Just crazy moment. But and then that leads to the blood serum tests, which is the most intense scene of they're all, like you guys were just saying, they're all tied up. We don't know at this point who is and who isn't the thing, but and this idea was in the novella about testing the blood. And it totally, for the world of the story, makes complete sense. What else are you going to do? So, one by one, they're testing everybody, and like everybody's coming up human. So it's right at the point that you are,
think your guard down a little bit.
Yeah. Then boom, that blood just fires off. And another,
that's such an awesome. I think that is a great. I also like piece of this, right? Like the fact that the blood itself reacts and tries to escape. I mean, this entire movie is just about everything trying to survive. Even the blood in the dish is, I mean, I think it just works on so many different levels.
Yeah. And as we see Palmer become the next thing, that shot of his face as his eyes are like expanding and his head's like sort of blowing up is, I mean, that's, if I'm Gary and I'm tied up right next to this guy, like, oh my God. And then, he escapes and gets windows, and McCready chases him out in the snow, throws the dynamite, blows him up. But if you watch that shot, that's Kurt Russell really out there, and that explosion was like a little bit too big, and you see Kurt get blown back into the building, and that's really Kurt. Like I think he got a concussion, and like he was messed up from that. He goes, and you really have to look for it. You can see him just fly backwards and boom, right into the door.
Yikes!
Yeah,
movie making.
Yeah.
But that scene, the blood serum scene, is just a classic, science fiction horror, intensity. It's perfectly done.
Agreed. I love that tension. That's the thing. Like the intensity and sort of the mystery of it all, like. And it's just a perfect ebb and flow to get you to those climaxes, like it's not like, oh, we're just waiting for the next big scare or the next big moment. It's not like just a horror film for being horror. Like, there's so many layers to this of like unlocking this mystery, but also like what's really going on. And then also who can trust who, and it doesn't try to build to like one big head. It just continues to like give you little avenues, and then these things happen, and now now they have to pick up the pieces and go to the next thing and try to figure out what's next. It's just like so it's just such a well done script and just a well done story that it's not about like A to B to C and it's over. So I think that's what it really gets me. Like I think I enjoy this a lot. I wouldn't probably pop it in any, unless I had to, but boy, do I like it. Like every time, like, I've watched it 3, 4, 5 times. I don't know.
That's a lot for you.
It's a lot for me. And certainly never twice in a single day in a row. Never. I don't know what that is.
I could watch it twice in a row and then play the board game. Like,
oh my God.
Yeah.
That's intense, but no, good. I like to just continue, like, as we're talking, just come in and be like, by the way, this is why I like this, and this is why it works. As though somehow my what do you call it? Endorsement of it makes it any better. But I think I continually get surprised by it, and I can see EK, as you say, like every viewing of it gives you something more to do, and there's I just so even this last time to watch it, it's not like, oh, I really enjoyed that. There were still more things I was engaged on throughout the entire film.
Yeah, what's something that's interesting about this too is the relatability. Like, why I think it resonates years and years later is because it's very restrained in how sci-fi it goes. I think the mark of a really great sci-fi film is you have to be just believable enough with the story and the technology to make the viewer go, well, this is real, but also, yeah, that could happen. And it's not overblown. There's not people, being transported into a spaceship and flying off. Yeah, it's implied that there's that technology, but we're not having to see that. What we're seeing is this weird organism kind of morphing and stuff. And so it's a great balancing act. This whole film is a great balancing act. And what I think is really kind of amazing is how safe it plays it while still pushing the boundaries so much. So another reason why I think that this still continues to resonate and find a new audience is that the story isn't asking so much of its viewers that it's unbelievable, and then it dates itself immediately. And you go, oh gosh, that special effect was like so 1982. It's very like subtle with how much sci-fi is introduced. It's just believable enough. but then it's also on the practical level of practical effects, breaking ground in what is possible for special effects in movies. So it's like story wise, it's safe. Effects wise, it's really pushing the boundaries. And it's like this total package. Because I feel like usually criticisms with films are, oh, well, it was Avatar. It was like this amazing visual spectacle, but maybe the story itself wasn't resonating with everybody, or it's just a drama and it needed more blood, or it needed more action, or it needed more flames. This one has got like this beautiful sampling of everything. Going back to what we said at the beginning, is there's something in this for everyone. But what I would say is that none of the things it offers is too much. It's just the right amount. It's like the Goldilocks movie. I know we're like really heaping praise on it, but it's true when you think about it. How can you have a film like be so innovative with the special effects, but yet still be so believable? Like, how does that reconcile with each other? And it's because the effects are still within the realm of possibility. That's great sci-fi.
Right. Well, and and it's still of that era where you're not using computer assistance, like it's like watch Ghostbusters. Ghostbusters is cool and stuff, but when they go a little bit beyond the practical, it gets a little, it doesn't look exactly great. It looks a little worldly. Not that, it's not a straight comparison, but it is that sort of thing of like, they're still so with Bottin, like innovating in a practical sense and keeping it grounded and real, that's a real difference. And it's not hard sci-fi. I mean, you can look at Alien, like that's almost kind of hard sci-fi, just the design of it all, right? Without using technobabble like that you would get in like a Star Trek or something, but or just insane like sci-fi stories. But so there's that difference of that subtlety of what we're dealing with. It's a full sci-fi movie, but how restrained it is really just it should allow almost anybody to walk in and enjoy it. And right.
Yeah, and I would say we'll probably talk about this more when we get to the end scene, but there's a moment in this film where it could have kind of gone out of restraint and gone a little to 1982, and it could have ruined the entire movie had they have gone that avenue. But to his credit, John Carpenter said, thanks for trying that. It's not right for the film. And when we get to that scene, even though I would have loved it, it would have ruined the movie, and it would have made it so dated that it would have lost its audience after 1990. It would have been like, oh gosh, another 80s film trying that. So that's another instance where this film is just so careful to be innovative, but not go too far. And that's why we can still talk about it as though it's a great movie today as it was in 1982. That just, man, it's got to be challenging as a director to say, I need to make my mark. I need to give the audience something they've never seen, but I also need to give the audience something they need to see without challenging them too much. And this is a really good moment, because as we see in Carpenter's later films, sometimes he goes a little too far, and he should have trusted his gut and said, maybe I should have cut that scene, because one bad scene in a great movie can kind of spoil it. And this almost had it, but didn't, luckily.
Less is more.
And that's really the thing with early Carpenter. Less is more was really working for him back then.
Right.
But as the story goes on, pretty quickly, we're really only down to 5 characters, one of which we know is a thing, which is Blair. And then you've got McCready, Gary, Knowles, and Childs. Childs, for some reason, they're like, well, we all need to stay together, but Childs, you're good. You can just go watch this room by yourself. You're fine. And that once they realize that Blair has been building a spaceship and is trying to get out, they're kind of resigned to the fact that they're not going to make it out of there alive. It's that now it's about stopping that thing and either killing it or just keeping it in the ice. So they're blowing up everything. They're blowing up the whole outpost. Childs is now gone. We another shot that we cut back to the same shot again, and where Childs was guarding, the doors open and he's gone. We see Gary and Knowles and McCready planting dynamite all over this one. I'm not sure what room that is. It's like a generator room, and poor Gary, is off further away from the others when Blair pops up, and that just putting his hand like into Gary's face, like another brutal, awful way to die. And he can't even scream. Like he's screaming, but it's just muffled.
Mm-hmm.
Another great effect there. And then that's where we see, like we talked about earlier, Knowles, who hears this going on with Gary, walks over, and then we just see nothing. It's just less is more. So the thought of what happens to Knowles is almost worse than anything we could have seen. And then we have the big confrontation between McCready and the Blair monster popping out from underground, and this giant monstrosity who's like half Blair, half dog, part thing, and I don't know what else. McCready, we don't get a big show, really a long showdown. McCready sets off the bombs, the whole base is blowing up, and then we come to our ending, which is one of the greatest endings I've ever seen in film. That because you're left with so much
statement, right?
It is, but you're left with so much emotion and so much like what happens next. McCready is clearly exhausted, and the base is on fire, but that's only going to last so long. He's got his bottle of whiskey with him, and he's basically going to sit down until he dies. And Child shows back up, and they just sit together and pass the bottle to each other. And the question we're left with is, who's the thing?
Is the person next to you the thing?
Yeah. Is McCready the thing? Has he been taken over? Did the Blair monster get him and that we didn't see? Is Childs the thing, or either or both of them the thing? So there's clues. There's little clues in that scene where, now this is all theory, and I haven't myself seen Carpenter confirm it one way or the other. I've heard that he has. There's a thought that we see breath coming out of McCready. We don't see any breath coming out of Childs.
Interesting.
If you watch it back, there's no cold, breath coming out of Child's mouth. Also, and this may have been why copper had a nose ring, that when it duplicates you, it can't duplicate things like jewelry and metal.
Oh, yeah. So anything that's not organic.
Right. So Childs had an earring. In the end, there's no earring.
Really?
Oh, interesting.
Does he just put on clothes after that? Because there's like metal zippers and stuff. And
sure. Yeah. Buttons.
Right. And aren't they taking over the body essentially anyway?
Sure. So there's definitely like holes in those theories, but it's something to think about. That. Fun. So, a lot of people think that Childs is the thing. Kurt Russell's or McCready is not. What happens next? Does Childs... What's the point? From the Thing's point of view, it now knows it's not going to get out of there. What's the point of killing McCready? Is it just time to just settle back into the ice and wait? Maybe it can survive long enough till a rescue team gets there. But
if it came from the spaceship, it's been surviving out there for a long time anyway. So, right,
it was frozen.
It was frozen until the Norwegians.
Right.
Unearthed
but it'll freeze again until somebody else unearths.
Correct. Yeah. It could freeze for another million years. Who knows?
It'll get its
I'll give it a season.
The breath thing is interesting. I want to go check that out.
Brent, we're gonna watch it. We're gonna watch it again when we're done recording.
Absolutely, back to back.
Yeah.
Watch it twice.
Maybe 3 times till the sun comes up.
Guys, go watch something else.
Yeah.
But EK, what's this? What was the scene that you're talking about that could have ruined it?
Oh yeah. Well, this really, and I was watching it with my wife Mariah last night too, and we both agreed, like, this, as much as it would have been cool, it would have ruined it, is that final showdown when it comes up through the bottom, and it's this weird multiple formed creature, this giant creature. It was supposed to be a huge spectacle, right? And it was supposed to be massive. And so what had happened is Rob had a friend who was this really well, respected stop motion animation guy. His name was Randy Cook, I believe. And he called him in and said, here's what we need is we need this creature to be able to move around and do all this cool stuff. And you can see the footage. It's really pretty impressive, but it's if you're a fan of Ray Harryhausen or something, you're going to love it. They do an animated sequence, stop motion animation of this creature moving around, and they built an entire miniature set of this whole final scene, and it is unbelievable how beautiful it is, like down to the tiny little lanterns and everything. Like, it is impeccable. So the woman, I forgot her name, but the woman who built the miniature at the beginning of the spaceship, she's the one that helped with this also. Mm-hmm. And all this footage is there. You can see him building it. And this strikes a chord with me is when I was a child, Clash of the Titans was one of my favorite movies. Yes. And so was Escape from New York, and both involved miniatures. And that's what I wanted to do with my life. Like when I was a kid and my parents would say, what do you want to do? I wanted to build miniatures for movies, and I wanted to be a stop motion animator. So even though I would have not had a career very long after that, because of what changed, anytime I see stop motion animation, I'm nostalgic and I love it. So the thought of there being stop motion in this is cool. However, when you see the final product, and you can see it, it's cool, but it looks like early 80s stop motion animation.
Yeah.
Which is so out of place with this film. And as much as I love that style of art, it does not have any place in this film. And they went all the way through with it. This painstaking miniature, all the scenes and everything. And Carpenter when he saw it said, it's cool, but we're not going to use it. And he cut that all out for those artists. That's a bold thing to do. But I can guarantee you, had he have kept even a millisecond of that footage in there, it would have dated this film so bad that I think it would have kind of tarnished the legacy and the rewatchability. So it's weird to think about how just a split second moment could really change an entire film's legacy, but it's true. It went from being a cliche 80s special effects movie to being this kind of long-lasting, brilliant piece of sci-fi because of that moment.
Right at the climax, too.
Yeah, I think the lady you're talking about, her name is Susan Turner.
Yeah.
Who did it.
And it's really incredible. I mean, credit to them is this set was beautiful and the stop motion was great. It just not for this film. It just didn't need to be there.
Kind of sounds a little bit like the octopus and Goonies, right? Like
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like cutting that scene out. Yeah.
You're like, as a fan, you love that it happened, but at the same time, you're glad it wasn't in there. But it'd be awesome to find. Is there footage of that? I mean,
yeah, you can see the footage of the animated creature at the end of the thing moving around in claymation and stop motion, and it really is cool looking. But it looks like a Clash of the Titans kind of creature. It doesn't look like what Rob had been doing through the entire film of practical effects.
Imagine
it's
all
like
that.
The Kraken doesn't hold up these days, the same way it did in Harryhausen, and so
imagine all that work though, all that time and energy that Rob put into it, and then if it had made the movie, just taken you right out and kind of watered down everything. But I think that was the right choice.
Yeah, it's definitely no small effort to do what they did, but that is a bold and brave decision to make. One I'm sure that a lot of those people were like very frustrated with.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure to do that, to be like, oh, by the way, we're not using that.
Yeah. They're like, what?
You worked on the thing? What did you do? Well, you'll never see it.
Yeah. I mean,
so we're left with our sort of open ending there. Your downer again. I love those downer endings that you don't know what happens. You really don't know where you stand at the end of the movie, and then that's it. And then we get the brilliant score come in by Ennio Morricone, who just such a great score throughout the movie, just adding to the tone, just another layer of getting the themes and the tones, as a feeling for you as a viewer, was so important in this movie. And really, the relationship between Carpenter and Ennio Morricone is pretty funny. That he, another idol of his from the spaghetti westerns and such an iconic composer, finally collaborating, and he's like, but I want you to do my score. Like,
Yeah.
you need to do John Carpenter's music, okay? So less notes. Like that was
funny.
basically what the note he gave him was, like, less notes.
Well, and he didn't even see the film. He just created a couple cues and sent it his way and said, there you go.
Yep.
And then Carpenter went to Alan Howarth, his long collaborator, and said, well, this isn't going to work. We got a whole movie to fill up. So to his credit, as a film composer, I can notice these things. But, my wife said yesterday, watching it again, she said, it's amazing how seamless it is between the three composers, really, working together to make a really brilliant score that feels like one composer. It was interesting to see because a lot of people said, it clearly, when Carpenter sent him his tracks and said, replicate this, he just did.
Yeah.
So it's more Carpenter than anything. However, to be able to go through and add another half of a score and make it feel like seamless and like one composer, really pretty incredible. It is a really great score. I mean, it's really
beautiful.
well done.
Well, apparently also, Morricone also did Hateful Eight, and whatever takes he didn't. What I heard is that some of the takes because Tarantino's he's obviously influenced by Carpenter, and he was excited to get the same composer, but apparently he used some of the takes that weren't used in The Thing and used them in Hateful Eight.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I mean, that was the Hateful Eight. I'm not a fan of the movie in general. I think there's, for Tarantino reasons, just too much. Like, he pushes it. It's a great idea.
Yeah, it's not my favorite.
Too gory. He pushes the envelope too far. But there's so many obvious parallels to The Thing with the setting itself. The music is the score to The Thing. The movie stars Kurt Russell. Like, it's so much thing going on there. Ultimately, it doesn't work for me, but
works better in Reservoir Dogs.
Yeah. Minus the Morricone score. So
right.
Yeah. Right. You know what though? I get where he's coming from, because I've had, entire scores I've done, and then they've gone a different direction, and I have to produce something else. Well, I did all that work, and if you're not going to use it, I'll use it for another project down the road. And I have. I've been like, well, if this didn't get used,
it's yours.
Yeah, it's mine. I'm not going to just throw it away, and it'll show up maybe a couple of years later in a different film.
For sure.
That's how it goes.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Tarantino ate it up. He gets to use takes of score that wasn't used from The Thing, which is such a massive influence on his filmmaking. Like that's kind of a perfect situation for him to do that. But I'm sure there are other takes and other scores that he's also not been able to use that have probably popped up in other places.
Oh yeah.
So, for sure.
So so the movie comes out, and unknowingly it's sort of set up for failure, and there's a lot going on. Universal, which I believe released both this and E.T., I don't think saw the full impact that E.T. was going to have. So by placing The Thing, which got, decent test audience reviews, they were making adjustments. There was a little bit of concern that people, wasn't going to hit with people. But they place it to release 3 weeks after E.T., which was, in hindsight, a huge, huge mistake. That you've got cuddly, friendly alien that families love. You've got, another Spielberg production with Poltergeist the same year, with where it's ultimately, a spoiler alert, a happy ending, that the family's together, at the end. And then you've got The Thing, which is the complete opposite, 3 weeks after E.T., which is like box office records and clearly the number one movie of the year. And this was doomed. Like, people were had such a negative response when it came out, critics as well. On top of that, the interest in horror films at this point was on a straight decline. It was like 70% less than it was a year prior. So that, we've talked about on some of the horror movies that we've covered, the Friday the 13th movies and Nightmare on Elm Street, that, there's a massive amount of horror movies being made, and the peak is really in the very early 80s, even though that trend lasts all the way through. It's just getting less and less hits throughout the years. But so it's sort of doomed, and some of the reviews are like, it's the most hated movie of all time, it's instant junk, it's wretched excess, it's boring. And that's from critics like Roger Ebert and high level critics, and it's really, it's not good. So which leads us to box office glory. All right, so let's look at the actual numbers now. So the film shot, I believe, from August to November of 1981. It shot in Stewart, British Columbia, and Juneau, Alaska, which was, by the way, we didn't talk about it. Using those exterior locations was so key. I mean, so difficult. Wow. Yeah. So difficult to film in, and have to use like snow plows to get up to the set from where they were staying. Yeah. And
oh my God.
I mean,
could you imagine if they'd have done something like Gremlins, where they just painted like snow on the parking lot and just? I
mean, really, like you could have done the whole movie on the Universal backlot, but using those, it added so much character to the movie and the environment. So important. It had a $15 million budget, as we talked about. It opens up June 25th, 1982, at number 8.
Ooh,
The Hateful Eight. Maybe that's why he made that movie. It opened up against Blade Runner and Megaforce, and everyone knows Megaforce was the number one movie of the week.
And I would have opened this up in the winter time. I mean, that's just like a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Take advantage of the cold weather.
Yep.
Crazy. This is like a perfect fit for pushing it till the winter.
Yeah.
Yep.
But it only has a $3.1 million opening weekend. It ends up with a total domestic run of 13.7 and 19 million worldwide. So with, the production budget is 15. With all the advertising, it's probably, usually closer to double that. So somewhere 25 to 30 million. This movie is lost money big time. It ends up as number 50 of 1982, smack dab in the middle of Grease 2 and Author with Al Pacino. So
Grease 2, cool writer.
It could.
That's a good movie.
The Thing could not catch up to Grease 2, unfortunately.
Well, you got Michelle Pfeiffer. What can you do?
Yeah, but that top 10 of that weekend of June 25th. I mean, look at what's in there. You've got E.T., you've got Blade Runner, Rocky 3, Star Trek 2, Annie, Poltergeist.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's you got a re-release of Bambi in there, kind of right behind them. But yeah, it's tough. That's a tough weekend.
Yeah. Isn't it so insane though that a film that flopped that hard? I can go to Target right now and go to the toy section and not find a single E.T. toy. But I can find a Thing toy just sitting right there on the shelf.
It's interesting that
that interesting?
Yeah, that they in all the comebacks.
Don't make me go grab my stuffed ET doll.
No, I'm just saying that it's interesting the way that this has changed over the years. We'll get to that, but who would have predicted when the numbers came in? This was such a flop that 30 plus years later, there would be like a rabid fan base buying toys of this film, not the number one film of the year on the shelf right next to it, E.T. That's just kind of fascinating to me. Yeah. It's weird how things play out sometimes.
It's crazy to me that in all the remarketing of old things and rebooting, that there hasn't been any kind of nothing with E.T. They've done nothing. After all the massive marketing that happened in the mid 80s for the movie, and now, like, there's nothing. There's no ET toys or video games or anything.
Well, maybe it's because you didn't get any Thing toys when it came out. We got plenty of ET toys, so there's more than enough to go around. So.
Yeah, maybe that's it.
ET's still trying to recover from its Atari game.
Yeah, you're right. That's it.
Yeah. Well, part of having these like toys based on these old properties and stuff, like there's something visually striking about all these characters and all of that. I mean, they're not toys, they're
collectibles.
They're sculptures.
You're not like no kid is like, oh, I want to think. I mean, some kids probably are, but they're not like little toys that they would play with, like from their cartoons that they're watching or whatever. They're visually striking. They're interesting. They can almost be on display, and they're cool little action figures or whatever.
Their parents are getting them for them.
But they're clearly like, it's definitely part of the nostalgia hook of for us. But again, there's also the design of from the film that like, oh yeah, well, that's actually kind of neat. Imagine seeing all these characters as action figures. That's cool. Let's try that, or I don't know. So there's something too. It's not like, oh well, E.T. was such an amazing. I mean, E.T. is just a silly, like a family film. It's like a
watch yourself.
You're on thin ice right
watch
there.
Yourself, David.
It's not a sci-fi movie. I mean it is, but it's it's a family.
Yeah, it's a whole different.
It's a family movie. What are you guys talking about? Did I say something controversial all of a sudden?
Don't minimize it. Do not minimize it, David.
I'm just saying you're not making
just a family movie.
The reason. Okay, all right. Well, but it is fascinating because it is like those old properties can come back, and like now that us as kids who were kids at the time. Like, hey, I've got extra money. Actually, boy, that movie was neat. And look at the design of that. That's cool. Like, I kind of want to have that. And that was not something that ever could have existed back then.
Yeah.
Speaking of the Thing toys, somebody at some point made a fake toy commercial, like from the 80s. They made it now, but seemed like it was just like a old G.I. Joe toy commercial, but with the Thing toys. It's hilarious.
From John Carpenter's The Thing, now the ultimate in alien terror is in the palm of your hand.
It's Palmer! He's turning into a thing! Quick, Windows, blast him with the flamethrower! Oh no, he's got windows! Real alien ooze! Oh no, he's getting away!
But R.J. McCready won't let him escape.
Hey, where's Blair? Ah!
The Thing action figures come with everything you see here. Each figure sold separately.
I also learned from my friends who collect all of those, they're more like art. They're like sculptures. They're not toys that if I call them dolls, I get in trouble. I made a joke like, oh yeah, I like that doll you got there. And they get really, really mad at me. But it is true. And what's interesting is how random it is, because yes, I totally agree with what you're saying, is that our age group likes to see these visually stunning subjects come to life now, like Killer Clowns from Outer Space is getting that too, because they're cool looking. Right. When I say it's weird though, in comparison to having a huge flop versus the #1 film of the year, is because you do still see like Gremlins toys and stuff that were big blockbusters. Like, why not ET? So I guess it's just it's so random what turns up and what doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. You got to figure what's Spielberg protecting with ET. What is
he's hiding something.
Well, it's just sort of like that's an easily, you relaunch that, you can definitely get something for it.
Well, we'll see. I wouldn't rule it out. I mean, everything under the sun is being remade or rebooted or a video game version of it. So. I would guess we've not seen the last of ET.
It's just some family
ET video game. Yeah, that'll happen.
Yeah.
Brilliant idea.
They've got to make it work, but
it's just some family film from the 80s. It's nothing.
Oh my gosh!
It's basically Harry and the Hendersons. Before Harry and the Hendersons.
Well, there's going to be a fight here.
Is there a way to mute? Is there a way
It's
to
the same
mute
movie. It's the same movie.
It's not the same movie.
It's basically the same movie.
All right. Well.
What else do we have to talk about?
All right, so the fallout of this is disastrous for John Carpenter. I mean, this is his first shot at a big budget movie, and from the studio's point of view, he's blown it. We know that is not exactly the truth, but that's the perspective of it. So his career is in panic mode at this point. So he turns around and has to do not necessarily a movie he wanted to do, but he does Starman as sort of a, like, you've done the really rough, violent, edgy movies. Now you got to do something nice. So
was Christina made for TV movie?
No, Christine. No. Yeah, but I think that was right after Starman, I believe.
I think it was right before Starman.
Yeah.
Was it? Okay. So he was probably, Christine was probably already
in production
when this comes out. So, so same thing. He's got to backpedal a little bit with Starman, which did sort of like level off for him, because that was a successful movie. So, but yeah, it's like always his passion projects, and the ones that he puts the most into, it's like they don't always end up like Big Trouble in Little China. We saw didn't end well for him, and really was the last sort of big studio movie that he would do. And he's devastated. He's like devastated by imagine just putting so much thought and just having, I would assume, just so much confidence that it's really going to do well. This is a great movie. I know I've got a great movie here. And then everyone rejects it.
Well, that'll be the theme of Carpenter through the 80s and 90s is, hey, I got a great film here and everybody's going to reject it.
Yeah.
Right.
But in doing so, you talk about Big Trouble too, his reaction to working big budget is to say, well, then screw all of you. I'm going back to the basics of where Carpenter thrives. We've talked about this on other episodes of him too, is Carpenter thrives when he's got limitations. Don't give him a big budget.
Yeah.
Give him a little budget and you will get a brilliant film, because he follows up Big Trouble with Prince of Darkness, which is amazing, which was an immediate reaction to saying, well, then I'm going back to my basics. And I think that's interesting story of him, is that he just keeps trying, and everybody goes, no, thanks, that didn't work. And then 15 years later, they go, boy, that was brilliant. It's weird.
Yeah.
It's that really is the story of his whole career.
Yeah. And then, as time goes on, the appreciation starts to grow, like kids like me when I'm 11 in 1991, watching it on VHS and loving the movie. So VHS was huge, was so important for this movie, and the replays on TV, like on, I don't remember if it was like USA Up All Night or TNT, like late night movies, but I feel like it was one of those channels that would air it regularly, and that kind of started to build the momentum back, and it was always, when I worked at Suncoast, we sold the thing all the time at that point, and then it came out on DVD, and then it was even more, and then so you have a wave of filmmakers coming up who also loved it as a kid. I mean, we see a whole episode of the X-Files, one of the early seasons, that's just a straight remake of The Thing. And you can start to see its influence and Carpenter's influence and people like Tarantino, and we've talked about, again, like you said, EK, we've talked about this on other episodes, that there's his impact is felt way, way later. And there's constantly life. In 1992, they come out with a Thing comic book series that immediately follows the ending of the movie. And I've read them, and they're not great, but it's interesting. Like, they go in a really weird direction that you find, like, they get rescued and Childs is the Thing, and then they're on a submarine, and the same thing, basically the movie happens again, but this time on a submarine. Then Childs or McCready's chasing Childs this whole time and all over like the world, and then they're in like the desert, and it's like G.I. Joe. It kind of becomes like G.I. Joe at that point. So
when's
really,
Alien versus Predator versus The Thing coming?
That'd be interesting. But,
well, they're all in Antarctica, so it would work.
Hey, yeah.
Remember, that's Alien versus Predator starts in Antarctica.
Yep.
Yeah.
The
surprise cameo by The Thing. Why didn't that happen in that movie?
A hooded figure comes up and it takes its hood back, and it's the crazy Thing.
Kurt's hair.
Face. Yeah.
It's the Blair monster survived. Then we've got 2002, a PlayStation 2 video game that supposedly John Carpenter said that that's canon. That you're a member of the rescue team who shows up. EK, did you have that? Do you have that game?
No, I have not played that game. I would love to, though.
I held it in my hands at like Circuit City like 20 times. It's like, I should buy it. I don't want to spend like $40 on it though.
Yeah.
I'm going to wait till it's cheaper. And then by the time it was cheaper and it was like $5, and I don't know. I don't think I was using my PS too much anymore, but supposedly that game is canon, what happens in there. So you get some things answered, and they come across the remnants of the camp, and they find the audio tapes from McCready. They find those, and they're looking for McCready and looking for Childs, and there's signs that maybe they didn't die, maybe they're still alive somewhere. And they find characters from the first movie, like their remains and everything. And I think that you sort of see there's where you sort of see Knowles. You get some answers to what happened there. But the prequel movie comes out in 2011, which also has the title The Thing. Now, I only recently watched it, and I actually didn't hate it. I completely understand why it wasn't a success and why it was misleading for people. But there's some great detail work. It's the story of the Norwegian camp. And they go to painstaking details of why everything is where it is when McCready and Copper go to that camp. Like, you see everything. You see the dogs and how the dogs get, become the thing. And the person who slit his throat, like, you see that happen. You see where, like, there's an axe in the wall. You see how that axe got in the wall. Everything, where the ice is, where they drag the block of ice to. The story within the characters is not nearly as compelling, as it's sort of just like treading on the same plot line. So it doesn't really feel like anything new. And there's a way too over the top, CGI fight sequence at the end that really is a bummer. But you've got a lead character that, you don't know where that character is when the 1982 version starts. So it's a really fascinating look. If you watch that one first and then watch the Carpenter version, see how they, it ends like the post-credits scene is the helicopter taking off and shooting at the dogs.
Yeah.
Interesting.
it's
So
a very Rogue One.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It leads right into Carpenter's.
Is that movie, is everyone's technically speaking Norwegian, but they do it in English, a la the 13th Warrior?
Yeah.
Yes.
Kind of thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which I love that. I love that concept. It's like you're reading it's in the language that the audience is supposed to understand, not the language of the characters. Right. And it's fun.
There's some cool moments in it too. I don't hate the movie at all.
Yeah, I've seen it. I don't hate it. It's an interesting companion piece. It certainly is like a retelling, and it's it's not
hate this.
It's not groundbreaking, but it's worth a watch.
It's okay. Sure. It's fine.
That's
if you're a fan. If you're a fan of the 82, like it's like John's saying, it's kind of interesting to see how the opening of 82 gets to where it is.
I would think making that prequel, like there's a reverence to the Carpenter film, like, and not just, it's clearly not like a money grab. It's like, well, we can try to do something interesting with this story that has already happened. Like that's what's so great about the opening of the movie is like all this stuff happened.
Well, the thing is,
and you'll never know the truth. Well, this movie attempts to do that. I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah, and I think the thing is like when the movie released, like it didn't tell you it was a prequel, right? Like there was a lot of like people I think thought it was a remake.
Yeah.
And then it's not until you get to the very end that you understand that it's a prequel. And I think, it's clever, but not again,
I might watch it.
Greatly done.
I might watch that. I think
it's definitely worth watching. EK, did you see it?
I haven't. I've always wanted to. I just haven't gotten around to it. It's not like I was boycotting it or anything. It's one of those things that when it first came out, it was really on my radar. And then if you miss that window, you're distracted by all the other things that are coming out after, and you just forget about it. And that's one of those things. Is actually when we first discussed doing this episode, I was like, you know what I should probably do is finally get around to watching that, and then I didn't. So
I'm curious what you think of it. So after you do watch it, let me know.
Yeah, I will. Oh, speaking of, I don't know. So I sent you guys something today talking about the legacy of the thing.
Yeah,
and hopefully you
that
guys
was
got
great.
to watch it.
Yeah.
But so I discovered that I think right before my daughter was born. So this would have been quite some time ago, maybe 12, 13 years ago. This duo, Zombie, who did this homage to the thing, but all through, again, stop motion animation and miniatures. So of course I loved it. Basically recreating the thing with G.I. Joes. So I highly recommend to your listeners to take the time to go watch. It's like 6 minutes long, but it is really, really fun to watch.
Yeah.
And you can just tell it was a love letter. And what a great little, attention to detail. Especially at a time where Carpenter was getting a little bit of a resurgence, but this is before he had started putting out albums again and all this kind of stuff. So this was at a moment of just pure fandom when it maybe wasn't as popular to be geeking out over John Carpenter like it is today. So that's why I also like it, is it's very sincere. It's not, it's not just kind of riding that wave of nostalgia. It was at a time when nobody was really doing this.
Yeah, that video is fantastic. We'll have to put a link up to it too. But
put it in the show notes.
What else? There was, so then we talked about the board game, which is called The Thing at Outpost 31, even though it's Infection at Outpost 31. Yeah. Exactly. Super fun. Highly recommend it. It is expensive, but if you're a fan of the movie, it's worth playing. And the more players you get, the better it is. It's kind of like Clue. Like there's similarities to Clue, that there's like 3 sections. The board is the outpost, and each room, like you see in the movie, and you have to move through. It's divided into 3 sections, and you have to move through the 3 sections. And each time you move to a new section, another thing is introduced. So everybody draws cards, and you either get a human or a thing. So when it starts, one of you is the thing. In the second section, 2 of you are the thing. In the third section, 3 of you are the thing, plus whoever has been taken over privately, by whoever was the thing. So it could be going to the third section. There's like 1 human.
Yeah,
and then
it's a great social deduction game.
Yeah,
that's best with more people.
Right.
Like the more people you have playing it, the better.
And the goal is to get out of the third section and to the helicopter and off the helicopter with no things in your party. So,
and it is freaking hard to win as a human. I'm just saying it. It is really difficult.
It's doable, but it's hard.
It is doable, but it is very difficult.
Yeah.
Save the world.
Save the cheerleader, save the world. What?
But a lot of fun. So if you're a fan of the movie, you should pick up the board game.
I think they did a re-release, so I think you can find it again, and it might not be as expensive, because I know when the original run came out, it was like $35, $40, and then it sold out. It was a Mondo release board game, so we've talked about Mondo before in the past, but they've done some limited board game releases, and this was kind of their first go. So it was difficult to find, and it at certain points you couldn't find it for less than $200 on resale.
Sure.
But now that's down. So I think they did re-release it.
Mm-hmm. So all of that being said, let's bring back our Kurt Russell scale of how many Kurt Russells would we give the thing?
All of them.
All of them, yeah. I think for
all the
me,
Kurt Russells.
Out of 13, I'm going to give it 18 Kurt Russells.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's my thoughts. What about you guys?
I'm right up there. Probably, this could be my highest rated Kurt Russell movie. I think 12 and a half out of 13.
Wow, nice, David.
I don't go that high.
Never. You hover right around the 7-8.
I'm a 7-8 guy. Yeah. Most things are okay. Brent,
EK, what about you?
UK?
Well, I think as a film in general, it's way up there. I think as far as a Kurt Russell film, it's a very solid one. We're gonna get banned from. Well, good thing you guys are taking a break because
Uh-oh.
no, I do think it's great, but I don't know if it would take, for me personally speaking, Big Trouble and Escape from New York and Captain Ron, if I'm going to be honest.
Oh, sure.
Those are
Love
for
it.
me, like, if I was on a stranded island and could only have certain Kurt Russell performances, it would be those. Now, if I could have certain John Carpenter films, we're having a different conversation. But, out of 13, it would still be a 12, because then the other ones could be up by quarters of a Kurt Russell, a lock of hair. So,
Yeah.
it's close, but this is a near perfect film for me as well. I mean, it's really, there's nothing to complain about. This is a brilliant film.
Is it possible that this can be not my favorite Kurt Russell movie that he's done with Carpenter? Or it could be my favorite Kurt Russell movie that he's done with Carpenter, but not my favorite Kurt Russell movie? Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Sure,
yeah. I follow that.
Yeah. I mean, this is great. I mean, I'm with EK. I do like Big Trouble quite a bit, and that might actually be my favorite Kurt Russell one, but this is, again, super close. I think it's my favorite Carpenter movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Guys, the more I've thought about it over the years, I think I'm going to make it official that the Thing is my favorite movie of all time.
Oh,
wow. That's official.
It's like grown over the years, and anybody who knows me knows that I have a very special place for the Godfather saga. That's 1 and 2 in chronological order. That was my favorite forever. I think The Thing has slid kind of right past it, and Godfather Saga is in at number 2.
wow.
And I think Aliens number 3, and then Chinatown. That's my top
All
4.
right. So you and The Thing are going steady, huh?
Yeah.
It's like social media official.
We made it
Just in
official.
time for Kurt Russell's birthday too. What
Yeah.
I know.
What a gift for him.
But
that's what
okay,
he was hoping for this year.
Yeah.
So all the movies out there, Good Burger, not as good. You're saying good. That's she's
Now,
all
if it was
bad.
Great Burger, it'd be a different story.
Yeah.
So
well, that's good. Wow. Well, this is it. This is breaking news here.
this is hot news.
The new hot all-time fave of the host of ReconCinemation.
Yeah.
It's The Thing, and we're covering it today.
We're covering it, and it's a fitting way to take our pause that unfortunately we have to do. I wish we didn't, but circumstances are kind of forcing it for right now, at least. But I think I'm going to speak for you guys, but I've loved doing this show and have had so much fun, covering it since the summer of 2018 when we started with a National Lampoon's Vacation, Escape from New York, and Jaws and Independence Day. And we've covered big movies, smaller movies like At Close Range that nobody talks about anymore. And, our Paul Newman stuff, and always looking at Kurt and Gene Hackman. And I've had so much fun bringing on awesome, cool people like you, EK, and Joe Seta, and Joel Sweeney, and John Kazempel, and Lindsay, my wife, who came on for an episode. And just it's been so much fun, and I've had nothing but a great time, and hopefully we can keep doing it when the time is right. David's
We'll be
crying.
I'm in tears. No. Yeah, I mean, what an amazing. We're almost we're approaching we're getting close to 4 full years and having doing this, and we've all reached a point where right now you got to take a little break from our steady schedule, but for people listening into the future, there won't be any breaks because we anticipate coming back with more episodes as we can, and we're going to do our best and all that. So for right now, in the present day, in 2022, we're just doing what any human being needs to do to take care of themselves and take care of things, and then hopefully we can all reunite and do this a lot. But we anticipate to do at least some as we go. So fewer releases over the course of a year for maybe a short period of time, but there's nothing that can keep us away from these microphones and have us talk about all the hot movies we grew up with or maybe haven't seen ever, which is mostly me. So so yeah, I mean, I'm so glad to have been doing this so far, and we will continue in whatever form that and frequency that takes. I'm all on board. So
yeah, I mean, what else could I say that hasn't already been said except we love you all and we'll be back.
Yeah, thank you guys for listening. You can still find us on social media. We're ReconCinemation Podcast on all the socials. So check us out there, and we'll make any future announcements when we're ready to pick up the ball again and get some new episodes out. We'll be sure to let everybody know. EK, thank you so much for all the theme songs that you've given over the years. The original theme song, the new theme song, the Kurt Russell theme song that we had for a while.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, before we gave up our Kurt Russell segment. Yeah, that was a good time.
Well, and maybe when you guys come back for the next season, we'll do an updated theme song for that too. But it's been a real
theme song.
Yeah, it's been a real pleasure, and I appreciate it. It was an honor to come back on for this, because a little personal note, as you guys are, reminiscing. I was there the very first episode. Our mutual friend Jared said, "Hey, John started a podcast," and I downloaded it and listened to it right away and was immediately hooked. And if you're talking about Carpenter, I was like, all right, yeah, I could get on board. So it seems very, very fitting to come, full circle now, all these years later. And it's grown. It's been fantastic. It's fun. It's something I look forward to. And for you guys to bring me in, it's kind of like, when somebody's having a baby and you're like, wait, who's that guy in the corner? Nobody invited him to the hospital. That's how I feel right now. But at the same time, I'm very excited for all of this. So as a listener and as a fan, I can't wait for you guys to come back. But also as a fellow podcaster, I completely relate to saying sometimes you got to take a break and do what you got to do. So it's not the end, but it's also what's best for the show.
Yeah.
Thanks, EK. You're always welcome at the hospital, man.
Oh, great. Yeah. Thank you so much. And thank you, Curtis Moore, for all the posters and the artwork that he's done, every episode. And so much appreciated. And thank you to everybody who's listened. Stay tuned and stay tuned for the next ReconCinemation, whenever that comes.
Take care.
Bye now.